Chapter 1460. The show was short. It ended in about 10 minutes. After the show, with Qin Zhou's warning, she struggled to maintain her elegant look. She felt physically and mentally exhausted. After the show ended, Unforgettable was dragged by Qin Zhou to take the top photographer from the country to the street shoot. As an artist directly invited by the brand's public relations department would arrange for one or two magazines to shoot the cover of the new fashion show this year. The artists invited by the media would also be responsible for a series of street shoots. For a star like Lin Ji, even if she didn't have such planned work to do, the reporters from all over the world who had been waiting at the entrance of the show could help increase her exposure. At the end of the day, Unforgettable was so tired that she was about to collapse. She rarely wore high heels. Hence, when she went back to her room and took off her high heels, her heels were already red and swollen with blisters. She gently rubbed her heels and grimaced in pain. What a sin! In the past, when she saw celebrities rushing to the front page of the Fashion Week, it seemed glamorous, but she didn't know that there was so much blood and tears behind it. It wasn't easy for everyone. Unforgettable sighed in her heart. Qin Zhou stood at the door and gave her a concise summary of tomorrow's draft. He told her to rest early and left. Lastly, he didn't forget to warn her that she could only have a piece of bread for dinner. Unforgettable felt miserable. She dragged the heavy gift and hung it in the closet. Then, she plunged into the bathroom and soaked in the bathtub. The moment her body was immersed in the warm water, she sighed contentedly and fell limp. It's so comfortable. After a hard day's work, taking a bath was one of life's greatest pleasures. She dripped a few drops of rose essential oil and then started to soak in the bath comfortably. As she soaked, she was so tired that she fell asleep in the bathtub. Unforgettable was awakened by the rapid and irritating sound of the doorbell. She woke up abruptly and opened her eyes. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The doorbell was still ringing. Over and over again, she didn't get tired of it. Who is it? Qin Zhou? Unforgettable furrowed her brows. She had some doubts in her heart. She got out of the bathtub, washed off the foam on her body, put on a bathrobe, and walked into the living room. The doorbell was still ringing. However, gradually, the person outside the door seemed to have lost his patience and became increasingly anxious and hurried. Unforgettable was so nervous that she tightened her clothes. Who could it be? It couldn't be Qin Zhou. After she came to her senses, she suddenly recalled Qin Zhou's warning. If you're alone in a hotel, no matter who rings the doorbell, don't open the door. If I need you for anything, I'll call you first. My assistant is right next to you. If you need anything, just call her number. You have to remember that this is not within the country, but overseas. Public security overseas was not as good as in China. Violent incidents often occurred in hotels. Also, as a public figure you have to know how to protect yourself. Therefore, before doing anything, he had to first confirm his own safety. No matter who rings the doorbell, don't open the door, just in case. She immediately found her phone and wanted to call Qin Zhou to confirm. His phone had run out of battery and shut down automatically. It would take 15 minutes to charge it. Unforgettable sat in the living room and looked in the direction of the door. She didn't dare to move for a long time. Chapter 1461. She remembered Qin Zhou's instructions and did not dare to open the door for strangers. After a long time, there was no movement outside the door. Unforgettable walked to the door and suddenly found a peephole on the door. She opened it and looked outside, only to see an empty corridor. Could it be a waiter? She shrugged and returned to the sofa. Her phone was already charged and turned on. She logged into WeChat, found Qin Zhou, and sent a few messages. Someone was ringing the doorbell crazily just now. It was so scary. Hey, could there be perverts in this hotel? Boss Qin, I'm so scared. I'm so scared that a bad uncle will come and kidnap me. Being overseas, the signal was a little slow. It took a long time for the message to be sent. Unforgettable complained about the broken network in the hotel. After a while, Qin Zhou replied. Did you open the door? Unforgettable replied. No, didn't you tell me not to open the door no matter who it was? I've always followed your instructions. Qin Zhou. Then he replied with an eye-rolling emoji. Are you still ringing the doorbell? Unforgettable replied. No, I just walked to the door and looked through the peephole. There was no one outside. After waiting for a few seconds, Qin Zhou replied. don't open the door. Protect yourself. If there's anything, I'll call you. Xianxia replied with a smile. Okay. After a while, Jianghu suddenly sent another message. Xianxia, you're walking the red carpet at the banquet tomorrow. Who are you going with? Xianxia fell silent. I'm going alone. Jianghu rolled his eyes again. Are you crazy? You're actually saying that you're going alone at such an important event. You're a newcomer walking the red carpet. You can't hold up the atmosphere. Xianxia, did she have a choice? Other than walking the red carpet alone, who else could she pull? She was unfamiliar with this place. Jianghu replied, You're walking with Xianxia at the banquet tomorrow. Xianxia was confused. Didn't Xianxia have a date? Jianghu heartlessly said, Her female companion was kicked out by me at the last moment. Xianxia was confused again. Boss Qin, you're so domineering. Jianghu said matter-of-factly, Isn't that nonsense? Xianxia is an artist that I used to manage. With his resources, it's just a matter of words for me to get them. Make some preparations tomorrow. You must control your aura and suppress the crowd. There will be local media present at the scene. When the time comes, I will get them to give you the headlines. Xianxia, Jianghu, point, what point? Wash up and go to bed early. I'll wake you up on time tomorrow morning. Xianxia raised her hands in surrender. Fine. I'm going to sleep. Jianghu, good night. Xianxia, good night. Xianxia put down her phone and walked to the bathroom. She picked up the hairdryer and began to dry her hair strand by strand. Her hair was very long and plentiful. If she tied it into a bundle, it would be a little difficult for her to hold it with one hand. Wuxia often told her that she was envious of her beautiful black hair. She even kept saying that with long hair like hers, when she became famous in the future, she would not need any post-production to take on those shampoo and conditioner commercials. She would be as smooth and beautiful as her hair. Xianxia only smiled when she heard that. She had inherited Mu Qingqing's hair. When she was young, she still remembered that her mother also had a head of smooth black hair. After washing her hair, she would often sit by the bed and comb it over and over again. That scene was really beautiful. Chapter 1462. The noise from the hairdryer was very loud. She brushed her hair with one hand and held the hairdryer with the other. However, from the corner of her eye, she saw a shadow flash past the door from the mirror. Startled, she quickly turned around and looked in the direction where she had caught a glimpse of the shadow earlier. At this moment, there was no one. It was as if what she saw was just an illusion. However, could it be an illusion? Her vision was well protected. How could she have seen wrongly? She clearly saw a shadow flash past. Xianxia's heart skipped a beat. She was still in shock. The door was closed properly. How could someone come in? The hotel's door required a card to be swiped to enter. Unless it was the hotel's management staff who had a backup card, no one could enter. Who's there? She yelled loudly. However, there was no response. Xianxia clenched her fists nervously. She walked out of the bathroom and scanned the huge living room with a bewildered gaze. However, there was no suspicious trace at all. She was staying in the hotel's luxurious suite. Other than the bedroom, there was also a living room. However, there was no one here. Could it be that her eyes were really playing tricks on her? Xianxia frowned tiredly. Perhaps she was too tired. These few days, her schedule was packed to the brim. There was not much space for her to rest. She was probably too tired, so her eyes were playing tricks on her. Thinking of this, she calmed down. She returned to the bathroom and dried her hair. She tied the knot on her bathrobe and walked to the bedroom. Just as she pushed the bedroom door open, a cold wind blew in through the window. She was stunned and couldn't help but frown. Why was the window open? She remembered that she had closed the window and drawn the curtains. Now, the window was wide open. Because the hotel was on a higher floor, the wind kept blowing in from the window, causing the curtains to flutter. Xianxia looked puzzled for a moment. She walked over and closed the window and the curtains. In an instant, the room returned to a dead silence. She was acutely aware that she was not alone in the room. Her whole body froze and her heart was beating like thunder. Xianxia bit her lips tightly. Her frozen body was unable to move. Her awareness had always been sharper than others. Just now, the wind outside the window was whistling. However, after the window and door were closed, the huge bedroom suddenly became quiet. Hence, she could clearly sense that there was another unfamiliar presence in the room. This person's aura was terrifyingly aggressive, like a ferocious beast that had its eyes on its prey. She could even feel that the pair of eyes that were fixed on her back covetously, as if they wanted to burn through her back. Who? Xianxia's eyes. She didn't even have time to turn to defend herself. A's eyes. She saw a tall figure's close was approaching her. She could see his faces. Bams! A powerful body pressed down on her. He pressed her firmly against the cold floor-to-ceiling window. Ah! Chapter 1463. Let go. Let go of me. Xianxia started to struggle violently. The man behind her suddenly lowered his body and lifted up the corner of her bathrobe roughly. That scorching sensation, along with a hint of anger, penetrated her in an instant. The force was so strong that it could not wait to penetrate her. Ah! The penetration, which was filled with anger, almost made her scream. Xianxia was shocked. However, in the next second, she smelled a familiar fragrance. She was suddenly startled awake. Just who was this familiar and enchanting fragrance coming from? Wuxia? She turned her head. However, before she could look up, the man lowered his head and sealed her lips fiercely. He entered her and took possession of her. With her lips in his breath connected with hers intimately. He let out a low sigh of satisfaction. Xianxia widened her eyes. With the faint moonlight shining in from the window, she saw the handsome face of the man in front of her. Wuxia's eyes, which were filled with anger, landed firmly on her face. However, this pair of eyes seemed to be slightly sharp. How could it be him? Xianxia was shocked at first. However, when she noticed the sharp anger in his eyes, she felt even more depressed. He seemed to be angry? However, he did not give her much space to think. He held her tightly in his arms and took possession of her. He was fierce and urgent. She could not help but fall into a romantic atmosphere. The room was filled with the ambiguous atmosphere of love. Wuxia wanted her. He was going crazy. How long had it been since he had sex with her? He could no longer remember. He only remembered how much he wanted to smash his computer when he saw the reality show, The Love Diary. When he thought of his woman in the show in front of the camera, with a shy smile on her face and a spoon in her hand, feeding another man, he had nowhere to vent his anger. When he found out that she was going to attend the Milan Fashion Week, he specially ordered his assistant to pick a gown from the Louis Vuitton headquarters and send it to her. However, she did not wear it. Instead, she wore another revealing gown. His anger was hard to quell. Could it be that this woman didn't know that he had never allowed anyone else to witness her beauty? Everything about her, be it beauty or sweetness, should be enjoyed by him alone. However, she had displayed her beauty in front of everyone other than him. He was very angry. He found out which hotel she was staying at and pressed the doorbell. No one opened the door for a long time. At that instant, his heart was filled with anxiety. He thought she was in some kind of danger. Or perhaps, he had encountered some inhuman unspoken rules. Perhaps she was inexperienced, so she didn't know the depth of Fashion Week. He knew the unspoken rules of Fashion Week like the back of his hand. In the past, he had received invitations to attend several Fashion Weeks. Many of the guests attending the Fashion Week were celebrities from all walks of life. Some artists would send themselves to the hotels where these celebrities were staying in order to advance their career. Even if some artists didn't have such awareness, some companies would still do the same. If the artist refused, he would force the issue. During the Fashion Week, there were a lot of dirty things happening in unknown corners. Chapter 1464. While she was blow-drying her hair, he sat in the room and waited for her. While he was waiting for her, she received a WeChat notification on her cell phone. Someone had sent her a message. However, the sender was Gu Xingzi's profile picture. Wuxia glanced at it from the corner of his eye and saw Gu Xingzi's name. Somehow, he unlocked the phone and read the message. He knew very well that this was her private matter. However, no matter who sent the message, he wouldn't ask about it. The only thing he hated was Gu Xingzi's name. Even now, he still couldn't forget the scene from that day. In one of the scenes in the Green Apple, He stood at the door and watched with his own eyes as Yun held Gu Xingzi's face in her hands and kissed him passionately. What Yun didn't know was that he was trembling with anger as he stood at the door and watched the scene unfold. He was obsessed with emotional cleanliness. Whether it was physical or spiritual, he didn't want to see her being overly intimate with anyone. His possessiveness towards her was deeply rooted in his bones. Even if it was an act, a kiss, or a hug, he wouldn't allow it. That day, he returned home early, only to see such a scene. His chest was filled with anger and he was about to explode. He tried his best to suppress his anger and didn't explode on the spot. However, Wuxia still remembered the look in his eyes when he looked at Gu Xingzi. At that moment, when Gu Xingzi hugged Yun there was a trace of intense struggle and agitation in his eyes. No one understood a man better than a man. Wuxia could see that Gu Xingzi's love for Yun was at odds with his complicated emotions. Gu Xingzi acted out that scene vividly portraying Yin Dongyu's conflicting and intense emotions. However, was his acting really that good? He didn't think so. Words could deceive people, but at that moment, the emotions and longing in Gu Xingzi's eyes could not deceive anyone. Others might not be able to tell, but Wuxia could tell what Gu Xingzi was thinking about his woman. Gu Xingzi liked her. Perhaps this feeling could no longer be described simply with the word like. His desire for her could not be hidden from him. It was more than just liking. In the first episode of The Love Diary, the scene of Gu Xingzi playing the piano for her was still vivid in her mind. Yun couldn't help but cry because Gu Xingzi's voice was so moving and emotional that everyone present couldn't help but cry. However, Wuxia knew very well that Gu Xingzi had integrated his inexplicable feelings for Yun into his song. This man had to be guarded against. He opened the WeChat message and saw Gu Xingzi's message. Tomorrow night on the red carpet, I'll give you 2 gowns. Can you pick one? You'll look beautiful in it. His eyes darkened at once. He was infuriated by Gu Xingzi's message. He was giving her a gown too? Could it be that he still had feelings for her? He seemed to care too much about her. It even exceeded the distance that should be maintained between colleagues. What about her? Would she agree to it? Would she wear the gown he gave her on the red carpet? Damn it! His woman was being coveted by so many people. He felt very unhappy. Chapter 1465. Yun did not know what was wrong with him today. He suddenly appeared in Milan, suddenly appeared in the hotel she was staying at, and suddenly attacked her from behind. He wanted her, and he wanted her very fiercely. He carried her to the bed and did it again. For 2 whole hours, no matter how she begged for mercy, no matter how she refused, until she weakly collapsed on the bed and no longer had the strength to struggle. Tonight, he was like a youthful and ignorant 17 or 18-year-old youth who had just experienced his first taste of forbidden fruit and did not know how to control himself. It was as if he had been waiting for this moment and had endured for several long centuries. It was as if he could not hear her begging for mercy, could not feel her refusal. His mind was completely immersed in this charm and gentleness. At this moment, Yun even had the heart to die. She weakly hugged the pillow. Her heart was sullen. This man was eyeing her covetously. He clearly wanted to cripple her. What was wrong with him today? This man on the bed had always been like an overlord, firmly grasping the initiative, but he rarely lost control like tonight. How she wanted him to be gentler, but tonight, it was as if he had been possessed by some kind of demon. What he wanted was so ruthless. After the passion subsided, he lay beside her and looked at her. However, she could not catch her breath for a long time. After the affair, the room was like a charming and gentle land of gentleness. She lay on the bed, the white blanket covering her body and covering her lower body. Her bare and fair back was exposed to the air just like that. Wuxia only took one look, and his eyes immediately deepened. This woman, if placed in ancient times, would definitely be a world-destroying enchantress who bewitched the heart of the monarch. Looking from afar, the beautiful lines of her back extended all the way. Such a sexy beauty was hard to describe with words in this world. In the past, she dressed up pure and refined, like a student who had just stepped out of school. She was young and tender, as if water could be squeezed out with a pinch. However, now that she had shed those pure and innocent clothes, lying beside him, she was even more like an enchantress, extremely charming and flirtatious. She lay lazily on the bed. Her long black hair draped over the pillow, spreading out like clouds. Her eyes were half open, and she was so tired that she didn't even have the strength to lift a finger. This time, he had tormented her quite a bit. Wuxia lowered his eyes to look at her, as if he had lost all his strength. Only then did the anger in his heart dissipate a little. Seeing that she was exhausted, he couldn't help but feel a little heartache and blame himself. At the same time, he was a little angry at himself for not being able to control himself and torturing her to such an overdraft. Thus he half propped himself up, slightly bowed his head, and quietly stared at her for a while before kissing her face. Her face was flushed with a seductive pink that spread from her ears all the way to her cheeks. The more he looked at her, the more his heart ached for her. His handsome face pressed down on hers, and his warm lips pressed against hers. It was as if he was comforting her, and he pecked her gently. Chapter 1466. She still couldn't stop panting, her weak moans ringing in his ears like a kitten's furry claws, scratching his heart coquettishly. Wuxia gazed at her slightly angry eyes and gently touched her pink lips. Following that, gentle kisses landed on her forehead, between her brows, and then to her smooth chin. He continued to do so as if to comfort her. Her eyelashes drooped and she didn't look at him directly, as if she was angry. When she thought about how intense they were on the bed just now and how this man used those shameful actions to possess her, she felt like she couldn't wait to crawl up and dig a hole so that she could bury her boiling hot face that was about to drip blood. The aftertaste of the affair still hadn't faded and her mind was still blank and short-circuited for a long time. He half lay on top of her and gently kissed her to comfort her. After a long while, she finally regained some of her senses, but she was still a little angry. Unbelievable. She had never thought that she could have such a crazy side in bed. When she thought about it, she felt her face become even hotter. So, ignoring his comforting words, she turned her face away and buried her burning face deep into the pillow. Wuxia still didn't let her off and kissed her ear charmingly. However, he seemed to be infatuated with her soft and fair earlobes. As his tongue gently traced the outline, his scorching hot breath took her in and played with her lips. The scorching hot breath by her ear and the intentional teasing made her feel a little unbearable. It was as if he was seducing her and wanted to confuse her. Her body was still in the aftertaste and was still very sensitive. How could she withstand his charm? Xianxia groaned in dissatisfaction and avoided his intimacy. She tightly pursed her bright red lips and forced herself not to let out any erratic breaths. Wuxia looked at her and suddenly laughed softly. Looking at her cute and delicate appearance, for a moment, he felt that this woman was so silly that she was adorable. So much so that the anger in his stomach disappeared in a puff of smoke. As long as this woman was by his side, he would completely lose his temper. When Xianxia heard him snickering, she became even angrier. She couldn't help but raise her head to glare at him with her flushed face. "What are you laughing at? What are you laughing at?" She glared at him with her mesmerizing eyes, a hint of coquettishness in them. Her face was still flushed from the lingering effects of their lovemaking, and there was a hint of anger in her eyes. Seeing her like this, Wuxia laughed again. He could tell that she was being shy. She was really shy. He was a little amused. This woman, it had been so long, but she was still shy. After sex, she would still show this shy and seductive look. Her skin seemed to be really thin. She also seemed to be very pure. Thinking back to what had happened just now, and how she had repeatedly begged for mercy while gasping for breath, Wuxia increasingly felt that this little woman was truly a rare and precious beauty. When he smiled, her face burned even hotter. "Stop laughing." Xianxia couldn't help but mutter and reach out to push his shoulder. However, the strength in her hands was so pitiful. After a few pushes, the man still didn't move an inch. For a moment, she was even more annoyed. She turned her face away again and ignored him. Chapter 1467. When Wuxia saw this, he could not help but laugh. He reached out his hand and gently stroked her silky hair. He liked her jet black hair. As he stroked it, her silky hair flowed through the gaps of his fingers like spring water. It was also like high-quality brocade, glowing with an extremely healthy glow. In his heart, women should have long, silky hair. When he looked at her from afar, her silhouette should have long, silky hair that reached her waist. When she looked back with a smile, she should be extremely charming. This woman's appearance belonged to the classic style. Her charming eyes were like silk, and when she smiled, she was extremely flirtatious. With such beautiful hair, she was even more gorgeous and seductive. He could not help but laugh. With one hand, he lifted a lock of her silky hair and kissed her ear non-stop. After kissing for a while, he seemed to be engrossed in it, but he still did not know when to stop. When he pressed his lips against her ear, he smiled faintly. There was a hint of mischief in his words. "Little thing, are you shy?" Xianxia's face became even hotter. She buried her face in the pillow and ignored his teasing. She ignored him. Not only did Wuxia not find it boring, but he even enjoyed her shy and seductive manner even more. Reaching out, he covered her ample bosom in an instant. Xianxia groaned. She could not help but shrink into the corner to avoid his provocative actions. However, what kind of man was Wuxia? How could he give her such a chance? The more shy she was, the more he wanted to force her to submit obediently. In front of a woman, men probably enjoyed the process of conquering her the most. Wuxia leaned over her body. He did not shy away at all. Xianxia only had to look up. From the corner of her eye, she could easily see his lean and muscular body. Her face was boiling hot, but she could not help but think angrily in her heart. How could this man maintain such a good figure? Generally speaking, it should be very difficult for someone who sits in the office all day to maintain such a textbook figure, right? He also did not go to the gym often. How could he maintain such a lean and muscular figure? This was really infuriating. She thought about how she could only eat a certain amount of calories every day in order to appear beautiful in front of the camera at the fashion show. To be honest, she was really hungry. Especially after what had happened just now, her stamina had been completely drained. Now, she only felt that her stomach was almost sticking to her back from hunger. Xianxia felt so wrong that she wanted to cry. What happened? Wuxia furrowed his brows slightly when he saw her aggrieved look. She cried because he bullied her? Xianxia snorted and turned her head away, ignoring him. How could he understand her sadness? Wuxia held her small face and turned it back. What's wrong? His little face is so bitter, as if he has suffered a great grievance. Xianxia pouted and glared at him as if she wanted to say something. Just as she was about to open her mouth and complain, a grumbling sound came from her stomach. Goo! Her stomach groaned miserably, as if it was complaining about her heartlessness. Xianxia's expression froze instantly. She bit her lip in embarrassment and felt even more wronged. Wuxia looked stunned. It was obvious that he had very good hearing in this quiet room, so he had clearly heard that miserable groan. Chapter 1468. Wuxia looked at her green eyes and then looked at her lips that were constantly licking. Beside his ears, he could hear the moans coming from her stomach. Goo! This cry became even more uncontrollable. One cry after another, it sounded like it was wailing, yet it also sounded like it was bitterly begging for mercy. Coupled with Xianxia's extremely gloomy and conflicted expression, Wuxia felt like laughing. Uft! He burst out laughing. Xianxia glared at him. What are you laughing at? Nothing. I'm laughing at your stupidity. Wuxia poked her forehead lovingly. Stupid woman, you're hungry. Don't you know how to eat? I want to eat it too, she mumbled, feeling aggrieved. She looked like a resentful housewife who had been locked up in her room for too long. Wuxia was even more amused. He cupped her bitter little face and gently ravaged it. If you want to eat, why don't you eat? Jianghu won't let me eat. Xianxia was angry and wronged. In a fit of anger, she ruthlessly betrayed her revolutionary comrade, Jianghu. When Wuxia heard this, he was furious. He won't let you eat? Why won't he let you eat? Because he's afraid that if I eat, I'll have a small belly and won't be able to wear the gown at tomorrow's banquet, Xianxia said frankly. Jianghu had put in a lot of effort for her. Reality proved that it was indeed very dangerous when she tried on the gown today. If her belly had been just a little bit bigger, she wouldn't have been able to wear the gown sent by the brand. However, the gown sent by the Xianxia seemed to be one size bigger. That was true. He had completely relied on the Xianxia's measurements. Moreover, under Jianghu's training these few days, she had lost a lot of weight. When Wuxia heard this, he couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. What was this Jianghu doing? No wonder he felt that when he was holding her waist, it was barely satisfactory. She had lost a lot of weight. He even suspected that if he used a little more strength, her waist would be broken by him. You're not allowed to starve yourself, do you hear me? Wuxia was a little angry as he ravaged her face. You won't eat just because they don't let you? Why are you so obedient in front of others? You'll do whatever you say? Xianxia. Stupid woman. Wuxia paused, stretched out his big palm, and patted her ******. Get up, eat. With that said, he picked up the bathrobe that had been thrown to the ground. He stretched his arm slightly and pulled her into his embrace. With one arm around her and the other holding the bathrobe, he began to put it on her. He had never personally dressed anyone before, so his movements were inevitably a little clumsy. Xianxia blushed immediately. Was this man, who was helping her put on her clothes, really that domineering Wuxia? Xianxia pursed her lips. Somehow, she felt that in his eyes, he had always treated her like a child. She looked up and saw his uncanny workmanship and handsome side profile. For a moment, she was a little mesmerized. His side profile, no matter from which angle, was handsome and perfect. This man was simply God's favorite. She even found it hard to believe that this perfect man in front of her would be the man she would hold for the rest of her life. Her man. These 4 words were enough to make her heart flutter. She didn't dare to imagine. Chapter 1469. Putting aside this man's dominance and professionalism, he seemed to be flawless. However, even though he was a little overbearing, he could be so adorable at times. In her heart, an inexplicable sense of belonging arose spontaneously. Wuxia suddenly turned his eyes and glanced at her. Xianxia felt guilty for a moment. Then she regained her composure. She struggled to get up and tried to snatch the bathrobe from his hands. I'll do it myself. I'll wear it myself. You don't have to. Wuxia snorted coldly and slapped her hand away. Xianxia groaned in pain. She rubbed the back of her hand that was slightly red from his slap and glared at him angrily. This man's strength was really strong. Just a light slap and her hand was already red. I'll do it myself. She reached out her hand again unwillingly, but he didn't allow it and slapped her hand back again. I'll help you wear it. It wasn't a question, but an order. He seemed to enjoy the process of serving her. Seeing that Xianxia still wanted to say something, he frowned and didn't say anything more. However, he was imposing without being angry. Xianxia gritted her teeth and couldn't help but glare at him again. However, this glare, which she was originally glaring at him angrily, seemed a little too flirtatious in his eyes. Hence, he suddenly lowered his head and bit her lips fiercely. In the deep kiss, there was a hint of fierceness, as if he couldn't wait to swallow her alive. Under the deterrence of his gaze, no matter how wronged Xianxia felt, she could only obey obediently. He draped the bathrobe over her body. While serving her, he didn't forget to take the opportunity to take advantage of her. Xianxia was angry but didn't dare to say anything. She allowed him to do whatever he wanted. Moreover, she didn't have the strength to resist him now. After he put on the bathrobe for her, he slapped her butt again. What do you want to eat? Xianxia's thoughts had drifted far away. When she heard him ask, she regained her train of thought. She pondered for a moment and said, I want to eat everything. Is that okay? Wuxia. Glutton. Wuxia walked into the living room and ordered an exquisite set meal. Soon, the waiter rang the doorbell and presented the set meals one after another. When Xianxia walked out of the bedroom, she saw that in the dining room, there were 2 exquisite candlesticks on the dining table. Under the warm candlelight, there were 10 exquisite dishes on the table. She only took one look and her stomach growled again. She felt even hungrier. Creamy mushroom spaghetti, white truffle puffs, French-baked snails, filet mignon. Good heavens! Xianxia could only feel the saliva in her mouth increasing. She swallowed hard and managed to maintain her reserved posture with great difficulty, resisting the urge to pounce over. Wuxia leaned against her back and hugged her shoulders. He teased. What's wrong? So impatient. Stupid woman, you have to be more reserved and ladylike. Yes. Xianxia sat at the dining table. Wuxia also sat down. Both of them looked at each other. Her eyes suddenly curved into crescents as she smiled. This is my first time enjoying a candlelight dinner. Wuxia raised his eyebrows and laughed. This is not considered dinner anymore. Candlelight supper. Try it. Wuxia rested his chin on his hand lazily and looked at her. This is authentic Italian cuisine. The taste was not as good as in China. It was authentic. Chapter 1470. The moment Mu Yaja finished his sentence, she raised her fork and knife, and a gust of wind swept away the clouds. Mu Yaja propped his chin on his hand, looking dumbstruck. His thin lips parted slightly in surprise, but he forgot to close them. Xianxia did not seem to notice the stunned expression on his face at this moment. Right now, she only cared about filling her stomach. She raised her fork and knife, ate a mouthful of steak, and took a mouthful of pasta. Before she could sigh in satisfaction, she swallowed a mouthful of salad. She was so hungry that she did not care about tasting the food carefully. She only wanted to fill her stomach and did not care about anything else. Mu Yaja was dumbstruck. His eyebrows twitched hard, and a row of black lines appeared on his face. Under his burning gaze, Xianxia looked up and saw Mu Yaja's stiff expression at this moment. For a moment, she was stunned. She furrowed her eyebrows and asked in a muffled voice, "What's wrong?" Mu Yaja suddenly retracted his gaze and pondered for a moment. "Forgive me for being blunt. Stupid woman, the way you eat reminds me of a word." "What is it?" Xianxia's mouth was full. Her mouth was full of food, so it was inevitable that she could not speak clearly. Mu Yaja sized her up again. Then he spat out a word mercilessly. "Refugee." Xianxia's face fell instantly. "Hey, you're not allowed to say that about me?" Mu Yaja knocked on the table and commented sincerely, "This is the truth." Xianxia protested innocently. "I'm really hungry. So, I can't care about anything else." Mu Yaja was speechless for a moment. His eyes narrowed slightly, but he could not hide his helpless smile. "You should at least pay attention to your table manners. Don't you want your image as an idol?" Xianxia pouted and asked him instead, "Why do I need to pay attention to my image in front of you?" Anyway, I don't have to be secretive in front of you, right?" She pouted coquettishly. While he was still in a daze, she lowered her head again and left. Mu Yaja stared blankly for a long time, unable to recover from her words for a long time. "In front of you, do I still need to worry about hiding anything?" Mu Yaja suddenly smiled. This woman sometimes was really annoying, but most of the time, she was so cute. How adorable. These words were extremely pleasing to the ears. He liked it when she acted coquettishly in front of him without hiding anything. It was a complete and unreserved look. This was the real her. Unlike in front of the camera, she always maintained a noble demeanor and was as elegant and perfect as a princess. In front of him, she was so straightforward. He loved this side of her. His gaze landed on her body. In this short period of time, she had swallowed another mouthful of steak. The oil stains stained her tender red lips. Watching her eat with such relish, just by looking at it, he felt like he had tasted the marrow and wanted to taste it. On her body, a feast for the eyes was vividly displayed. Even for someone like him, he couldn't help but be tempted by her. As a result, watching her eat, he also felt a little hungry. After Xianxia finished eating, all the delicious food on the table was in her stomach. Mu Yaja was so shocked that he could not close his mouth. She could eat so much? He did not order a lot of food, but according to her usual appetite, she probably could not finish it all. It looked like this little thing was really hungry. Chapter 1471. What a gluttonous little kitten. At night, Xianxia was sleeping soundly as she laid her head on his arm. However, he was still in high spirits. His large palm gently stroked her swollen belly and gently flicked it from time to time. It seemed to be bouncy. Not bad. It felt good to the touch. It was a wonderful thing in life to eat and drink to one's heart's content. Of course, the end result of eating and drinking to one's heart's content was that when Xianxia was brought to the Louis Vuitton show by Jianghu the next day, she realized that the zipper was stuck at her waist when she tried on the gown. The stylist was still a little suspicious. When she was doing her makeup yesterday, she had put on the ink-style gown for Xianxia. That gown was even tighter at the waist than this one. It was even slightly too big for her. How could it be that the zipper was stuck at her waist after just one night? It didn't make sense. Xiaxia's waist was clearly very thin. She tried again and tried to pull it up forcefully. However, she couldn't pull it up no matter what. At this point, the stylist didn't dare to use force anymore because the gown was extremely expensive to make. If she used too much force and something went wrong, the gown would be damaged. A gown that cost as much as 7 figures wasn't something they could afford. Xianxia stood in front of the mirror and heard the stylist behind her say weakly, I can't pull it up. You can't pull it up? Xianxia frowned. However, when she realized that the zipper of the gown was stuck at her waist, she felt a little guilty. Jianghu, who was standing outside the fitting room, heard it and asked nervously, What's going on? What's stuck? Xianxia looked even more embarrassed. Was it because she ate too much at dinner last night? It couldn't be, right? It had been 10 hours since she had dinner. No matter how bad it was, she should have digested everything in one night, right? Why was the gown stuck at her waist? Jianghu's angry voice came from outside the fitting room. Sure. He only called out her name, but the suppressed gunpowder in his voice could not be concealed at all. Xianxia swallowed nervously and laughed dryly. Ha. President Qin. If you have something to say, please. I remember that with your size, this gown will definitely fit you. Xianxia felt so guilty that she didn't say anything. What happened? Xianxia looked up at the sky, so nervous that she broke out in cold sweat. Jianghu leaned against the door and his sinister voice drifted into her ears. Don't tell me. You ate something last night? At this moment, Jianghu's expression was as serious as a judge of the Azura Palace. Xianxia was so scared that she broke out in a cold sweat. She hesitated for a long time before she mumbled, I ate a little. You ate a little? Jianghu obviously doubted her words. Xianxia corrected her again. A little more than a little. How much did he eat? Jianghu was a little angry and questioned her sternly. Xianxia was so scared that she confessed everything. I ate steak, salad, pasta, white truffle puffs. Jianghu's expression was stiff and cold. After Xianxia finished speaking in one breath, she felt that the huge studio fell into a dead silence. Why didn't you eat more? Why don't you just stuff yourself to death? Xianxia pursed her lips and pretended to be dead. Chapter 1472. Now you're pretending to be mute? Your mouth must have been wide open when you were eating, right? Xianxia. Damn, this Jianghu was really vicious with his words. Xianxia was embarrassed for a moment before she said helplessly, Master Jianghu, I was really too hungry. Too hungry? Jianghu raised his eyebrows and said in an unfriendly tone. Yes, so I couldn't hold it in. Jianghu questioned again. Couldn't hold it in? Because I haven't eaten for a few days. So you ate and drank so much the night before the red carpet that you burst your stomach, Jianghu mocked mercilessly. Xianxia said in an aggrieved tone. I know I was wrong. I'm sorry, Mwax. Mwax your head. Jianghu exploded. What's the use of apologizing to me? You're about to go to the show. Originally, you should be in front of Louis Vuitton's executives in 2 hours, showing off your noble and elegant temperament to your heart's content. But now you're in the fitting room, stuck in the zipper of your gown. Haha. You don't know how to control yourself at all. I clearly told you to bear with it for the next 2 days, but you ended up eating like this. If you appear in front of Louis Vuitton's executives with a bulging stomach, what would they think? Xianxia. Jianghu snorted. Louis Vuitton is looking for brand ambassadors. They have to be beautiful and have a great figure. But what about you? Do you think this is a pregnant woman's red carpet show? Xianxia said in a sobbing tone. It's not that exaggerated. The stylist couldn't take it anymore. She walked out of the fitting room and comforted Jianghu. CEO Qin, it's useless to be angry at Xianxia now. Why don't we think of a way? I brought a corset. Why don't we put a corset on Xianxia? She might be able to wear the gown then. There were pros and cons to a corset. The pros were that with a corset, one could tighten the waist and wear the gown. The cons were that a corset was harmful to the body. Moreover, with a corset added to the gown, one would inevitably look a little bloated. Therefore, the corset had to be tighter than normal. This person was going to suffer a little. Xianxia's face fell when she heard that she had to wear a girdle. Jianghu crossed his arms. His expression was unfriendly, but he didn't say a word. The stylist carefully probed. What do you mean? What else can we do? Jianghu said unhappily. What time is it now? There's not much time left. Hurry up and bring the girdle over. Yes. The stylist took the girdle and put it on for Xianxia. After a long time, the zipper was finally pulled up. However, it was Xianxia's first time wearing a corset. She couldn't get used to it for a while. When she walked out of the fitting room, her face was red. Obviously, she was uncomfortable because of the tight fit. Her expression was a little unnatural. Jianghu walked in front of her, snorted coldly and ordered, "Look up." Xianxia subconsciously looked up. "Stick out your chest. Smile." Xianxia curved the corners of her lips. Jianghu crossed his arms and looked elegant and cool. He looked her up and down and then nodded with slight satisfaction. However, he still couldn't help but poke her head. You greedy little cat, who asked you to steal food?" Xianxia looked aggrieved. "See, you've suffered. Do you dare to do it again next time?" Xianxia shook her head and looked bitter. Jianghu looked at her pitiful look and couldn't get angry no matter what. "All right. I'll let you off today." Chapter 1473. She spent the entire afternoon checking out the fashion show, accepting media interviews, taking street shots, and shooting a magazine shoot. Her schedule was packed to the brim. Xianxia felt like she was going to fly like a hydrogen balloon. When they arrived in Milan, Xianxia had to admit that Jianghu had a lot of resources in his hands. In fact, compared to Lin Ji, as a newcomer, she did not have Lin Ji's fame. Even so, Jianghu still managed to get her a Louis Vuitton endorsement deal and even arranged a role for her in a Hollywood blockbuster. This might be a common occurrence for A-listers. But for a newcomer like her, it was really unbelievable. With such a low exposure rate, it was indeed shocking that she was able to obtain such two international resources. On the other hand, although Lin Ji was more famous than her in the country, she could only sit on the cold bench overseas. Lin Ji's manager could not compare to Jianghu's resources, so the pitiful Lin Ji could only grit her teeth and watch Xianxia bask in limitless glory. She changed into one gown after another, and the interviews came one after another without any rest. Lin Ji was so angry that her teeth were itching. How could she not be angry? She was so jealous that her eyes were about to turn red. When she arrived at the Milan fashion show, she had imagined that everything would be perfect. She would change into a beautiful gown and walk under the flashing spotlights. She would flash her elegance to her heart's content and leave her most beautiful smile on the camera. But the reality was cruel. She could only watch as Xianxia was constantly scrambled by the media. She stood among the crowd, waving and smiling like a high and mighty goddess, noble and elegant. Her every frown and smile attracted the media and spotlights like a flock of ducks. Compared to home, her surroundings were too cold and cheerless. The only media outlet that had interviewed her was one that she had a good relationship with in the country. What made her even angrier was that within a few minutes of the interview, as soon as they saw Xianxia, they walked away with their cameras, leaving her alone on the cold bench. She wished she could turn her gaze into a pair of sharp daggers and mercilessly stab holes into Xianxia's irksome body. Humph. Shameless *tch. It's been a whole day, and she's like a butterfly, never ending. Lin Ji's assistant sneered softly. Obviously, she didn't like Xianxia either. "I'm really suspecting that the media, which has been swarming around her like flies, are paid by Xianxia at a high price." That's not the case. The foreign media can't compare to the domestic media. If these media outlets were all hired by her, then it shows that Xianxia's background is not ordinary. Lin Ji paused and narrowed her eyes. "There are some things that you can't say. Be careful with your words and actions." She sounded like she was reprimanding her. Her voice was a little too loud when she was criticizing Xianxia just now. The assistant seemed to have realized that he had raised his voice a little. He lowered his voice and said, "If you didn't hire him at a high price, how else can you explain that? She just debuted, and her only movie hasn't been released yet. How could she be so famous?" Lin Ji snorted. "Why don't you take a look at who her manager is?" Chapter 1474. At the mention of Jianghu, she knew that this manager's resources were not to be underestimated. Hence, she had nothing to say. On the night of Louis Vuitton's special event, there would be a Milan fashion show banquet. The venue for the banquet would be the famous Milan Palace. As the former seat of government in Milan, the Milan Palace had not only carried the glory of history for many centuries, but it had also become an important cultural center, creating new miracles. The guests attending the banquet were all top celebrities from various industries. They were all star-studded and influential. World-class supermodels, international fashion moguls, Italian designers, the chairman of Milan Fashion Week, and top designers were all present. The lineup for the banquet was dazzling. On the list of invited guests, the top celebrities in the country were also on the list. Lin Ji had also tried her best to get an entry ticket. She was so excited that she was about to cry. It was a great honor for an artist to be invited to the Milan Palace for a fashion banquet. It was like stepping into the Hall of Fame of the fashion industry, shining with stars. As an artist collaborating with Louis Vuitton, Lin Ji also had to go to the styling room to get her hair done. Hence, it was inevitable that she would bump into Xianxia again. Qin Zhou turned on his mocking mode the moment he saw Lin Ji. "Hey, who is this? What's her name again? I can't remember." "Xianxia. Is she also on the list of invitees for this banquet?" Xianxia pretended to be at a loss. "I don't remember." "Look at my memory. How could I forget?" This Milan fashion banquet is divided into invited guests and media collaborators. Invited guests are the VIPs invited by the organizers. Media collaborators, on the other hand, didn't receive an invitation but used the media's qualification to get in. Qin Zhou paused. Then he sneered and said coldly, "I was wondering why I didn't see her name on the list of invited guests." So, she used the media's name to get in. This sentence, however, was full of killing power. Lin Ji's face was extremely ugly, but she still pretended to be elegant and argued, "President Qin, you must be mistaken. This time, I'm attending the banquet as the spokesperson for Louis Vuitton's new spring collection. What you said is nonsense." However, Qin Zhou smiled coldly and said disdainfully, "Aya, you're so smug just because you're the spokesperson for the new spring collection. You're really something." Lin Ji was completely speechless. She wanted to say something but stopped. However, in front of Qin Zhou, she felt that no matter how much she refuted, she had no power. Lin Ji stomped her feet angrily and went to change into her gown. She didn't want to embarrass herself in front of Qin Zhou. Xianxia secretly sighed in her heart. She had seen a lot of things, but when it came to poisonous tongues, Qin Zhou was still a level higher. "Go and change your clothes," Qin Zhou exhorted her. Xianxia went into the changing room with the assistant who was holding the gown. Qin Zhou raised his hand to check the time. He walked to the balcony and made a call to Xianxia to arrange a meeting. Lin Ji changed into her gown and came out. She saw that Qin Zhou wasn't around. When she saw Xianxia in the changing room, her eyes darted around and she suddenly thought of a wicked move. Thus, she waved her hand and called her assistant over. Then, she whispered a few words in her ear. "Remember, take advantage of Qin Zhou's absence and quickly do it." Chapter 1475. Lin Ji sneered and glanced in the direction of Xianxia's dressing room with evil intentions. Then, she went into the dressing room to get her hair done. "Humph. Xianxia, aren't you smug? Just wait and see. Let's see how lawless you can be when Qin Zhou isn't around." Lin Ji's assistant was called Xiao Ling. She had been following Lin Ji since her debut. She was very efficient in her work and shared a common enemy with Lin Ji. Moreover, she was very vicious. She remembered that when Lin Ji was filming a period drama, a second female lead had stolen her role. Under Lin Ji's instructions, the assistant had dragged the second female lead to a hotel and beaten her up. The assistant had stripped her of all her clothes and taken many unsightly photos. The assistant had then used the photos to blackmail the second female lead and demanded that she respect Lin Ji in everything she did. This second female lead had just graduated from an art school. She had no power or background. Because she was a professional, her acting skills were not bad. Although it was a supporting role, it was not easy to get this role. When she acted, she was reserved and professional. Compared to other actors, she was a more innocent little girl. After being blackmailed with so many unsightly photos, the second female lead was scared witless. Therefore, when she was on the set, she did as Lin Ji wished. Not only was she obedient, but she also wanted to worship Lin Ji like a living Buddha. This was not a big deal. After being scolded by the director, Lin Ji was in a bad mood and often vented her anger on the second female lead. The way she vented her anger was disgusting. Let's not talk about the heartless ones for now. Once, Lin Ji came back from the set, because she was angry, She took off her shoes and asked the second female lead to lick her feet clean. How overboard was this? Lin Ji actually dared to ask for it. The second female lead could not accept it and was very unwilling. Lin Ji called Xiaoling over, and when Xiaoling arrived, she beat her up again. Only then did the second female lead obediently give in. Moreover, she cared a lot about her innocence, so she could only obey humbly. Not only did she lick Lin Ji's feet clean, she was even forced to drink a few mouthfuls of the water used to wash her feet. The entire process was recorded by Xiaoling. The next day, the second female lead went to the set. When the director saw the bruises on her arms and shoulders, he thought that the bruises were caused by something dirty. Hence, he fired her from the set on the grounds that she was having an affair with a man on set. Actually, this second female lead was a pity. She was pretty, capable, and kind-hearted. If it weren't for Lin Ji, she might have shot to fame with this role. However, after the drama aired, she left the entertainment industry and went into hiding. After leaving the entertainment industry, she married a rich businessman with her good looks. However, Lin Ji found out about this. Therefore, she sent the unsightly photos that the girl had been forced to take to the rich businessman's mailbox. She also spread a rumor that the girl had been involved in a relationship with a man and a woman in the crew. She was called out by the director and kicked out of the crew. When the rich businessman found out about it, he was so angry that he divorced her after half a year of marriage. Then, Lin Ji used some tricks to seduce this rich businessman. She was booked by him for a period of time and obtained some resources from him. Through this rich businessman, she met a famous director and used this famous director's TV series to become famous. Chapter 1476. On the surface, she looked bright and innocent. Only then did Mu Shi fall in love with her. What she did not know, however, was that she was a very sinister person in private. In fact, Lin Ji was very petty. Once she bore a grudge against someone, she would not let the matter rest until her reputation was ruined. Earlier, she had whispered to her assistant to sneak to Xianxia's changing room with her phone and secretly take a few photos of Xianxia changing into her gown. This was not the first time she had done such a despicable thing. Xiaoling smiled knowingly. Taking advantage of Qin Zhou's absence, she sneaked to Xianxia's changing room and stood on a stool. With the help of the selfie stick, she stretched her hand in the direction of Xianxia's changing room. The camera was muted, so Xianxia did not notice even after a dozen photos were taken. She was struggling with her gown. Louis Vuitton's gowns were more cumbersome to wear, so she was focused on putting on nipple pads. The stylist wanted her to squeeze as much cleavage as possible. The more obvious it was, the better. Xianxia, on the other hand, was frowning and did not want to be too revealing. Xiaoling succeeded just like that. Holding the photos in her hands, she was secretly delighted for a while. She then opened the door and was about to go out to ask for a reward from Lin Ji. When she opened the door just now, she only felt a tall figure standing at the door, as if blocking all the light. His tall and big body stood tall like a dark cloud. Xiaoling was startled and her heart trembled. She raised her head and saw a man as handsome as a god. Xiaoling's heart tightened. It was not because of this man's handsome looks that angered both men and gods, nor was it because of his powerful aura that made one's heart tremble. It was because at this moment, this man's eyes were as sharp as ice, piercing her body and making her tremble. Mu Yaja blocked the door, his handsome face gloomy. He had just arrived at the studio and heard that Xianxia was in the changing room, so he wanted to take a look. As soon as she arrived, she saw a selfie stick sticking out from the ceiling of Xianxia's changing room. She could vaguely see that the camera had been turned on and had secretly taken a few pictures. His eyes were extremely sharp, and he immediately saw that the phone screen had captured Xianxia's half-naked body. His anger immediately surged. Who was it? How dare he secretly take photos of her changing clothes? Xiaoling was shocked by his expression, but she did not know the identity of the man in front of her. She asked stupidly, "Who are you? Don't you know it's scary to suddenly appear at the door?" Mu Yaja was silent, but his eyes fell on her phone. Xiaoling did not notice his anger at all. She looked around and asked suspiciously, "Who are you? Don't you know that this is the VIP lounge? Unauthorized personnel are not allowed in. What were you doing just now?" Mu Yaja questioned. When Xiaoling heard this, she was stunned and felt guilty. She instinctively held her phone tightly behind her back and asked innocently, "What does it have to do with you?" However, she was panicking inside. Could it be that this man had come in just now? What a bad time. Could it be that he had seen her every move? Xiao Ling cursed silently and said fiercely. Then, she wanted to retreat. I'm not going to talk nonsense with you. I have something to do. Stop right there. Mu Yaja abruptly grabbed her arm and pulled her back without a word. Chapter 1477. In the changing room, Xianxia was alarmed by the argument outside the door. She put on her gown and hurried out. However, she was stunned when she saw the confrontation at the door. Why are you here? Xianxia was confused when she saw Mu Yaja. This was Louis Vuitton's VIP room for women. How could he barge in so openly? She took a closer look at the woman in Mu Yaja's hand and found her rather familiar. Xianxia thought about it seriously. Wasn't this Lin Ji's assistant? Why was she here? Just as Xianxia was wondering, Xiao Ling started to struggle fiercely. Let go of me. What are you doing? Although this man was quite handsome, but why was he grabbing her hand for no reason and not letting go? Xiao Ling complained in her heart. Mainly, she felt very guilty and wanted to leave this place quickly. Hand over your phone. Mu Yaja grabbed one of her hands and glared at her with a gloomy expression. His eyes were filled with rage. He never had the habit of being rough with women, but that didn't mean that he would tolerate it to the end. Xiao Ling was so flustered that she broke out in cold sweat. Jianghu had just finished his call when he heard the argument coming from the VIP changing room. He carefully knocked on the door and heard a man's voice. He didn't know what was going on, but the voice of the opposite sex alerted him. He immediately pushed the door open and entered. However, when he saw the confrontation in front of him and saw that the woman Mu Yaja was holding was Lin Ji's assistant, his expression turned ugly. This is Xiaxia's changing room. Why did you sneak in? Xiao Ling pouted innocently. I went in the wrong way. I didn't do it on purpose. Why are you so agitated? Mu Yaja sneered at her matter-of-factly manner. You secretly took photos of her, he said sternly. Xianxia didn't react for a moment when she heard that. However, when she calmed down and saw the phone in Xiao Ling's hand, she thought of the scene in the changing room and felt a chill in her heart. She secretly took photos of her? Thinking of this, Xianxia was furious. She took a few steps closer to her and asked sternly, Did you secretly take a picture of me changing my clothes? When Jianghu heard this, he immediately understood. His gaze was no longer as gentle as before. Instead it became sharp. You secretly took photos of Xiaxia changing clothes? No. Xiao Ling tried her best to defend herself. Are you guys kidding me? I was just holding my phone, and all of you are actually accusing me of taking photos secretly? I saw it. With only 4 words from Mu Yaja, Xianxia did not suspect anything. What kind of person was Mu Yaja? Why would he wish for a nobody for no reason? Hence, she walked forward and snatched the phone while Xiao Ling was distracted. My phone. Give it back to me. Xiao Ling was extremely nervous. Xianxia pursed her lips coldly. Without looking at her, she picked up Xiao Ling's phone and opened the screen. The phone was very new. It looked like it was bought a few days ago. It was the latest model of the iPhone 7 Plus. She didn't even have time to set a password. Hence, she opened the photo album and quickly found solid evidence in the album. Chapter 1478. Xiaxia's face turned redder and redder. She scrolled through the photos and deleted them one by one. When she was done, she realized that more than 20 photos had been secretly taken. She flew into a rage out of humiliation. Gripping her phone tightly, she glared at him and said angrily, You secretly took photos of me changing clothes. How can you be so shameless? Who told you to do this? Mu Yaja's gaze turned even colder when he heard that. He tightened his grip even more. Xiao Ling sucked in a breath of cold air from the pain. She felt as if her wrist was about to be broken by this man. Oh my God! What is this man doing? Why is his strength so terrifying? Jianghu sneered, his eyes filled with mockery. Who else could it be? It must be her master who ordered her to do this. The master he was referring to was none other than Lin Ji. Xiao Ling gulped nervously. Before she could explain herself, Xianxia threw her brand new phone to the ground in a fit of anger. The brand new iPhone 7 Plus broke into pieces from the violent and intimate contact with the ground. The screen shattered into pieces. Xiao Ling cried out in pain. Her heart ached for her newly bought phone. This was a new phone she had just bought. How could it be broken just like that? Xiao Ling was furious, but she didn't dare to say anything. At that moment, Lin Ji had just finished doing her hair. Hearing the commotion in the changing room, she hurried over. She was shocked to see such a huge commotion when she opened the door just now. Instinctively, she realized that her assistant had messed up the job. Lin Ji's throat moved. She glared at Xiao Ling from the corner of her eye, annoyed at her incompetence. Xiao Ling received her cold glare and shrunk her neck in fear. She pursed her lips. Now that she had been caught red-handed, she wanted to cry but had no tears. Lin Ji was only thinking about how to clean up the mess. Thus, she quickly asked, "What's the situation?" Mu Yaja turned around and met her eyes. He glanced at her condescendingly but didn't say a word. In his eyes, this Lin Ji didn't have the right to make him speak. When Lin Ji saw him, she was so scared that her legs went soft. When she entered the room just now, her attention was all focused on Xianxia and Xiao Ling. In her panic, she didn't notice Mu Yaja's existence at all. However, when he saw that it was him, he was so scared that he couldn't stand still. She had seen him once. This man was the Supreme Emperor of Huanyu. Mu Yaja was the CEO of Dishing Financial Group, the highest executive. Huanyu Entertainment was just one of his many businesses. It was said that he was a rather swift and decisive person. Why was he here? Lin Ji was a little confused. What's the situation? Don't you feel guilty asking this question? Qin Zhou snorted coldly. He had been in the industry for many years and was quite experienced. How could he not see that Xiao Ling had secretly taken nude photos of Xianxia under Lin Ji's instructions? His mockery made Lin Ji's face even more embarrassed. However, who was she? Her acting skills were superb. When she pretended to be innocent, it was very convincing. Anger and shock appeared on her face. At the same time, she looked at Xiao Ling with a pained expression and said in disappointment, "Xiao Ling, what did you do?" You secretly took nude photos of Xianxia." Lin Ji interrogated sternly. When she said this, it was as if she wanted to push all the blame onto Xiao Ling. Chapter 1479. She thought that Lin Ji would help her exonerate herself, but she didn't expect her to change the topic and pour all the dirty water on her. For a moment, Xiao Ling felt wronged and disappointed. She wanted to say something but stopped herself. "Tell me, did you do it? Did you do it?" Lin Ji glared at her. Her hoarse voice was filled with disappointment and pain. Lin Ji's acting skills were good to begin with, especially at a time like this. It was vividly displayed. Xiao Ling widened her eyes helplessly, her mouth slightly agape. She was caught off guard by Lin Ji's sudden change in attitude. Surrounded by so many people, Lin Ji was the only one on her side. Even though she was the only one on her side, she was still questioning her sternly. She was so scared that her legs almost turned to jelly. What was she doing? What was Lin Ji trying to do? Why was she questioning her so fiercely? Wasn't she the one who ordered her to do all this? Now, not only did she not help to exonerate herself, but she even poured all the dirty water on her. She had to bear such a big black pot. How wronged was she? However, she couldn't blame Lin Ji for not helping her at all. She was already caught red-handed. How could she still argue? Even if Lin Ji wanted to exonerate her, she would only implicate herself. Lin Ji was a person who knew how to sail according to the wind. She looked around and immediately jumped out to clear her name once she saw that the situation was not right. One couldn't help but admire Lin Ji's brilliance. Qin Zhou narrowed his eyes dangerously. He had many doubts about Lin Ji's attitude in his heart. He didn't even need to think about it. Xiao Ling had been ordered. If not for Lin Ji's order, how could she have thought of using such a method to secretly take photos of Xianxia? Lin Ji winked at Xiao Ling from an angle where no one could see, wanting her to cooperate with her act. However, Xiao Ling was in a state of panic at this moment. How could she understand her look? She shrunk her shoulders in fear. She looked at Qin Zhou's gloomy face for a while, and then looked at Mu Yaja, who was as awe-inspiring as a god. She was terrified to the extreme, and her lips trembled as she explained, I didn't. I really didn't, Xianxia said in disgust. I've already seen it. Why are you still trying to defend yourself? Is there any use? Jianghu's voice became even harsher. Why did you do that? Why did you think of stealing Xiaxia's photos? Are you under someone's orders? Xiaoling was so shocked that her shoulders trembled. She subconsciously glanced at Lin Ji with a helpless and hesitant gaze. Lin Ji was furious. This Xiaoling was so stupid. Why didn't he know how to cooperate with her? Thus, she said angrily, I didn't expect you to be so vicious. Why are you still quibbling? Why did you secretly take photos of her? Gigi you? Xiaoling was aggrieved and scared. She subconsciously wanted to rat Lin Ji out. Lin Ji saw that the situation wasn't right. She rushed in front of Xiaoling and gave her 2 tight slaps. I've really misjudged you. I didn't expect you to use such despicable methods. Xiaoling was slapped hard. She only felt a burning pain on her face. Her face was slapped to one side. She subconsciously covered her face and looked at Lin Ji in shock. She didn't expect her to be such a person. Chapter 1480. Sob, sob, sob. She was so aggrieved that she started crying. Lin Ji frowned angrily. You're still crying. How dare you cry? Then she carried Xiaoling to Xianxia and pushed her. Why are you crying? Apologize to Xianxia. Sob, sob, sob. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Xiaoling had no choice but to apologize while crying. Xianxia's face was cold as she looked at the master-servant pair in front of her expressionlessly. Everyone present knew that Xiaoling was being used by Lin Ji. However, Lin Ji was one step ahead and put on a good show. Xiaoling was also willing to take the blame, so no one could say anything. Seeing that Xiaxia's face was still cold, Lin Ji slapped Xiaoling again. Do you think you can just apologize like that? You're not sincere at all. Kneel down and apologize. You have to make her forgive you. Although Xiaoling was unwilling, she had no choice but to kowtow under Lin Ji's pressure. Bang, bang, bang. Every time he kowtowed, he would apologize. His voice was loud and clear. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I'm sorry, please forgive me. I'm sorry, I really know my mistake. Lin Ji stood together with her arms crossed like a vicious queen, looking at Xiaoling kowtowing with satisfaction. Xianxia felt disgusted no matter how she looked at her. She was the one who instigated it, but she pushed all the blame to others. If it were her, she would not do such a thing. She thought about how Lin Ji had sent someone to secretly take photos of her changing clothes. Fortunately, she did not succeed. Just imagining the consequences of letting Lin Ji have her way was enough to make one shudder. Xianxia was also secretly angry at herself for being careless. She did not notice that someone had secretly taken photos of her. There was no lack of such ruthless people in the entertainment industry, who used such vicious methods to harm others. All right, don't be an eyesore in front of me. I won't forgive you. Xianxia said. Lin Ji's expression changed and she immediately explained, Xianxia, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by won't forgive you? Don't you know very well what I mean by that? Xianxia snorted coldly. Since ancient times, only villains can be offended. Today, I'll give you a way out, but that doesn't mean that I'm a pushover. If something like this happens again, I'll expose your despicable methods to the media. Lin Ji's eyes turned sharp, but when she caught a glimpse of Wuxia and Jianghu's cold faces, she could only suppress the anger in her heart. There are some things that I have to make clear. I really didn't instruct Xiaoling to do this. Xianxia, you don't have to make oblique accusations. You don't have any evidence to back up your suspicions. I'm not afraid of crooked shadows. You can say whatever you want, but I have a clear conscience. With that, she turned around and kicked Xiaoling. Why are you still kneeling? Let's go. Xiaoling stood up with tears in her eyes. She glared hatefully at Xianxia and left with Lin Ji. Xianxia was speechless. She had seen thick-skinned people, but she had never seen such a thick-skinned person. What a weirdo. Wuxia walked to Xianxia and sized her up. He frowned and scolded. How could you be so careless? You let someone take advantage of you. Xianxia stuck out her tongue. I didn't notice. Bang! Wuxia flicked her forehead. Chapter 1481. If he hadn't noticed it in time, Who knew what would have happened next? Was this stupid woman so stupid? Xianxia suddenly asked. Chairman Mu, what a coincidence. You're in Milan too? Yes. Wuxia nodded. His meaningful gaze fell on Xianxia. Every word he said was extremely ambiguous. I'm in Milan to handle some business. Business? Xianxia almost choked on her saliva. She couldn't be the official business that he was talking about, right? Why did such a plain sentence sound so ambiguous when it came out of his mouth? What a terrible man. Xianxia pouted in her heart. Xianxia raised his eyebrows. Chairman Mu, what brings you here today? She'll be my female companion on the red carpet tonight. Xianxia was stunned when he heard this. For a moment, his expression was complicated. Previously, Xianxia had already told him that Xianxia would be his female companion on the red carpet. Firstly, it could solidify the hype of the couple and promote the upcoming movie. He had already made arrangements with the media. Secondly, it could solidify the remaining hype of the first episode of The Lover's Diary, with Xianxia and Xianxia. Who knew that Wuxia would appear out of nowhere? Wuxia, however, was unaware of what the manager was thinking. Are you going to wear this tonight? As soon as he finished speaking, he looked down and was suddenly attracted by the gown she was wearing. She had purposely chosen the gown Xianxia had sent over today. This gown wasn't considered conservative. It was pulled low at the chest and the stylist had done his best to squeeze a little cleavage. It was very eye-catching. It was too revealing. The gown was a tube top and had a low-cut design. Her voluptuous breasts were almost on the verge of popping out. Xianxia's body was the type that was skinny but not voluptuous. When Xianxia was a teenager, her breasts weren't so voluptuous. Perhaps it was because she had been breastfeeding, but her breasts were more developed. Coupled with the nipple pads, it was simply impossible for men to take their eyes off her. It was too exposed. It made people involuntarily want to press her down on the bed and ruthlessly humiliate her. Wuxia commented in his heart. Change out of this. He suddenly ordered. Xianxia was a little confused. Why? Wuxia glanced at him coldly. Don't you think it's too revealing? Xianxia was at a loss for words. All right, it was indeed a little exposed. But for a Fashion Week banquet, this was already considered a conservative approach. Some Hollywood actresses even appeared in see-through outfits. Xianxia was already being very conservative. Alas, even if he were given 10 guts, he would not dare to say this in front of the man. Go in exchange for the one I sent over. Wuxia's deep voice was filled with unquestionable determination. Xianxia pursed her lips, but there was nothing she could do about it. She did not resist and could only hug the qipao he sent over to her and enter the fitting room. About 10 minutes later, Xianxia walked out of the fitting room. She walked in front of the mirror and compared herself. Wuxia turned sideways to look. However, his originally deep and bottomless eyes suddenly had a flash of amazement. For more than 10 seconds, he was deeply mesmerized by her and could not take his eyes off her. Xianxia was also stunned. Chapter 1482. The gown was designed in the style of a cheongsam. The style was pure, just like the style of the old Shanghai cabarets in the 1920s. However, this gown was not a traditional cheongsam. It was a fusion of Chinese and Western elements, a combination of Chinese and Western elements. Unexpectedly, Xianxia looked surprisingly beautiful in it. This gown retained the standing collar, slit, rolled edges, luxurious fabrics, and embroidery. It extended the skirt to the length of the floor, creating a precedent for the cheongsam evening gown. The design of the slit up to the knees weakened the sexy elements and added a bit of royal majesty. The position from the neck to the collarbone was designed with a hollowed-out design. The white skin and sexy collarbone could only be glimpsed, but to a great extent, it interpreted the beauty of the Chinese sex appeal, giving people a kind of looming feeling. The cheongsam was sleeveless, revealing Xianxia's fair shoulders and slender arms. Every stitch and line of the embroidery on the gown was handmade, showing the magnificence of aristocracy. The slit on both sides rose to the hips, but it was just enough to cover it. It was not considered revealing, only a pair of jade legs faintly showing. Such an absolute territory, but it had a slightly heart-throbbing feeling. The waist was tight, and the exquisite figure was perfectly revealed. Looking from afar, it was exquisite and beautiful. Not every woman could interpret the beauty of a Chong Sam. When Xianxia put on this gown, people felt that she had lost some of her youthfulness and gained some elegance and magnificence. More importantly, there was a charm that had settled down over time. Women were like flowers, like winter plum blossoms in the snow. They were proud and self-admiring, but with the most arrogant attitude, they looked down on the passing of time elegantly. Xianxia's temperament was more pure, but this gown deepened and subverted her temperament. It became mature and beautiful. Between her eyebrows, there was a seductive look, as if there was an endless charm to it. Even Jianghu was secretly depressed that he had misjudged the situation. Xianxia's style was no less inferior to the ink-style gown that Mr. Gong had sent over. Beautiful. So beautiful. For a moment, it was hard to find words to describe this aesthetic beauty. Wuxia did not expect that Xianxia would be so suitable for this dress. When she wore it, she was so beautiful that he could not look straight at her. An enchanting beauty assaulted his face. For a moment, he actually felt his body heating up slightly. Because of her appearance, he couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. Deep down in his bones, a man deeply loved the beauty of a woman, which was a bit erotic and a bit ascetic. However, he wished that this beauty belonged to him alone. Xianxia saw his burning gaze on her body. She shyly tugged at her skirt and asked curiously, "How do I look in this?" Wuxia suddenly snapped out of his thoughts and slowly took a few steps towards her. "What do you think?" Wuxia leaned over, stretched out his arms, and trapped her in his arms. His thin lips were close to her ears, and his breath was like orchids. "My body is heating up just by looking at you. Don't you think it looks good?" Xianxia's face was burning hot. "Hey!" She couldn't help but push him. "Don't be indecent. Can you answer me seriously?" "I'm answering you very seriously." Oh. Chapter 1483. Hey! Xianxia did not know whether to laugh or cry. Being stared at by him with such a burning gaze, she could only feel her face heating up. She could not help but feel a little helpless. Wuxia lowered his gaze to look at her bashful and timid face. He could not help but nod his head and kiss her. Jianghu, who was standing by the side, coughed somewhat unwisely. Ahem. Oh please. He was still here, all right? Could he not flirt with his woman as if there was no one else around? Jianghu spoke up at the wrong time, interrupting Wuxia's actions. The man turned his gaze and glanced at Jianghu with slight displeasure. Even though he only said that he was slightly displeased, when Wuxia's somewhat impatient gaze landed on Jianghu's face, the poor Jianghu only felt as if he had died 10,000 times in those few seconds of being stared at by him. After filtering through more than 1,000 horrible ways to die in his mind, he felt the urge to retreat. He coughed awkwardly and pretended to be innocent. "Chairman Wuxia, I still have something to do. I'll make a call first." With that said, the soles of his feet were greased with oil and he left. Xianxia furrowed her brows in annoyance, and her face burned even more. Why did this man not care about the occasion at all? She pushed him a little angrily. "Hey, even if you're in heat, you should at least look at the occasion." "In heat?" Wuxia looked back and glared at her in disbelief. This woman, had she become bold? She actually dared to use the word heat to describe him. "What? Aren't you in heat right now? There's someone else here. Can you be more careful? Heh, let me show you what it means to be in heat, all right?" Just as Wuxia finished speaking, Xianxia's sixth sense suddenly warned her that the situation was not good. She immediately wanted to avoid him. I still need to do my hair." With that said, she wanted to quickly leave his line of sight. However, who was Wuxia? Would he give her a chance to escape? He didn't allow her to resist at all. He just grabbed her waist with one hand and pulled her into his arms. With a bang, he pressed her against the door of the changing room. Xianxia did not even have time to protest before the man nimbly turned her over, forcing her to face the door. Following that, his tall body boldly pressed against her. Even though they were separated by 2 layers of clothes, she could still feel the changes in his body, and her heartbeat became even more rapid. "Hey, Wuxia, don't act recklessly," Xianxia exclaimed in surprise and said in a low voice. "Act recklessly?" Wuxia's sexy and magnetic voice lingered in her ears, revealing a bit of devilish charm and provocation. Between his words,
There was a hint of hidden meaning.
You're obviously looking forward to it, huh? Anticipation? What was there to look forward to? Xianxia bit her lips. Just as she was about to get angry, the man's hand lifted the hem of her cheongsam. She exclaimed and wanted to stop him, but he did not intend to give her the chance. It should be very exciting to do it in the changing room. Wuxia, don't do it here. Xianxia blushed and her heart pounded. She felt his fingers roaming around her body, and for a moment, she panicked. Are you a beast? Even if I'm a beast, I was awakened by you. Your brain is filled with sperm. Beast. Xianxia still could not stop being angry.
Wuxia curled his lips and his eyes were playful.
Chapter 1484. Xianxia struggled slightly, but in the next second, her wrists were easily restrained by him.
He entered her from behind as she resisted slightly.
Without any foreplay, it was slightly difficult to enter and exit. However, as his skills deepened, her body gradually relaxed. He pressed on top of her and made love for a long time. When her body went limp, he vented all of it on her body. After everything was over, Xianxia felt that her legs were so weak that she couldn't stand up. Her legs turned to jelly. She gritted her teeth, feeling extremely embarrassed.
She could only let herself go limp in his arms and do whatever she wanted.
Wuxia carried her to the sofa and carefully cleaned her body. There was a sink in the changing room. He took a hot towel and wiped her clean. Xianxia suddenly remembered that he didn't use any safety measures just now. She sat up and glared at him.
Hey, just now you.
Wuxia calmly raised his eyes and looked at her quizzically. HM?
Did you aware that?
Xianxia blushed and asked. No. A certain man's tone was so righteous that it couldn't be any worse. She flew into a rage out of humiliation. No. Why didn't you use any safety measures? After saying that, she started counting with her fingers. My last period was. The safe period should be. After counting for a long time, Xianxia slapped her forehead and said in distress, I'm not on my period today. After thinking about it, she looked as if she was facing death calmly.
Forget it. Wuxia curled his lips and heard her say seriously, I'll buy some morning after pills later.
The man was furious.
No. Why not?
It's not good for your body to take pills. Xianxia retorted in an unfriendly tone. Hey, you're being unreasonable. If it weren't for the fact that you didn't use any safety measures, would I need to take emergency morning after pills? If I don't take them, it'll be very dangerous. I'm in a dangerous period today.
What are you afraid of?
Wuxia frowned, but he was annoyed by her fuss. I'm not irresponsible. Xianxia was startled. She heard him say, if you are pregnant, you can stay at home and take care of the baby. He dreamed of having another child with her. It would be best if she was a little princess. He dreamed that she could give birth to a daughter for him. He liked daughters very much. If she could give birth to a daughter, he would treasure her in the palm of his hand and give her endless love. Xianxia was stunned for a while, but she said resolutely, I won't. You're not?
Wuxia narrowed his eyes dangerously.
His expression was slightly angry. Why should I give birth to your child? Oh, you think you can give birth to a child just because you want to? You didn't even ask for my opinion. I don't want to give birth. Xianxia said unhappily. Wuxia suddenly grabbed her chin. You don't want to?
This woman was actually unwilling to give birth?
Yes, I don't want to.
Why?
There's no why. Xianxia was silent for a while, then said, My career is on the rise now. I want to work hard on my career first. Let's put everything else aside for now. No. Wuxia said unhappily. Is your so-called career acting? Or is it like today, dressing up beautifully and being followed by the media like stars chasing the moon? At this moment, Xianxia was definitely the most beautiful. Actually, there was one thing that she didn't say. One of the reasons why she wanted to become an actress was because he was such an outstanding man. Before becoming his wife, she wanted to become more outstanding, to become someone who was worthy of him. Xianxia looked at the mirror and lifted her chin slightly. Her lips curled into a beautiful smile. Suddenly, Wuxia's calm voice came from behind her. Walk the red carpet with me tonight. Chapter 1486. Tonight. You're going too? Xianxia looked at the suit he was wearing. She did not realize why he was dressed so formally. Was he invited to tonight's banquet too?
Wuxia replied. You will be my female companion.
Xianxia was stunned. She suddenly remembered that Xianxia had asked her to walk the red carpet with him. So she said, "That. No.
Why not?" Wuxia obviously could not accept her answer.
Give me a reason. Xianxia smiled elegantly and seemed to be provoking him. Mr. Mu, I have an appointment. Is that a reason?
Wuxia snorted coldly.
Rejected. How could he not know that Xianxia had asked Xianxia to walk the red carpet with him tonight? Would he allow it to happen? Only two things would happen tonight. Either she would walk the red carpet with him, or she would not be able to attend the banquet tonight. She would be tied to the plane and go home directly. It was that simple and crude. Did he want his woman to attend the banquet as another man's female companion? Would he sit back and do nothing about it? Xianxia was speechless. You left the company and came to Milan. Why are you joining in the fun?
Wuxia replied. Because there are always some people who are not self-aware and are coveting my woman.
I'm worried. His straightforwardness made Xianxia blush. She narrowed her eyes and smiled helplessly. Chairman Mu, aren't you thinking too much? Who would dare to covet your woman? Are you paranoid about being persecuted?
Wuxia suddenly stood up and slowly approached her until he was right in front of her.
He leaned forward slightly and hugged her waist, pulling her towards him. Xianxia fell into his arms.
He whispered in her ear, I'll give you two choices.
Either you walk the red carpet with me, or you pack your luggage and go home. You choose. You're threatening me.
Xianxia gritted her teeth in anger as she glared at him.
So what?
Wuxia smiled provocatively and said evilly, You want to bite me? Xianxia was so angry that her face turned red, but she heard a certain man say in a noble and cold manner, Miss Yun, please don't be ignorant of your good fortune.
There are so many female celebrities lining up to walk the red carpet with me, but I only chose you. Didn't Jianghu's team always want to give you exposure? Isn't this a great opportunity? Xianxia narrowed her eyes. However, Wuxia said slowly, Jianghu asked Xianxia to walk the red carpet with you because he wanted to create hype. Then, wouldn't I be more suitable as the target of the hype? Xianxia was speechless. Half an hour later, Xianxia was done with her styling. When she walked out of the VIP room with Wuxia, Jianghu was standing outside the door, smoking. When he saw them holding each other's arms, he choked on the smoke. What was going on? Xia, what's going on?
Jianghu was a little confused.
Tonight, she's walking the red carpet with me. Wuxia said coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, Jianghu was stunned. What? Xianxia was walking the red carpet with Boss Mu? Did the sun rise from the west? Although Wuxia was the big boss of Huanyu, he had never walked the red carpet with a woman in all these years. Jianghu suddenly thought of the relationship between Xianxia and Wuxia. Oh. He wasn't that surprised. Chapter 1487. Jianghu was happy that Boss Mu was willing to walk the red carpet with Xianxia. Nonsense. Why wouldn't he do something good that could increase Xianxia's exposure? If Wuxia was to accompany Xianxia to the banquet, it would be a glorious thing. It wasn't because of anything else. It was because of Wuxia's status. Moreover, he had never attended such a banquet before. This was the first time and probably the only time. Just when Xianxia thought that Jianghu was going to flip out, she saw him rubbing his hands with a smile. He looked very excited. Xianxia, you will walk the red carpet with Chairman Mu tonight. You must perform well. With Chairman Mu around, you will definitely be on the front page tomorrow. The corners of Xianxia's lips twitched violently, feeling as if she had been sold off. She felt like she had the world with Wuxia at the banquet of Milan Fashion Week. As a guest invited by the organizer, Wuxia naturally had to be the finale. Thanks to him, Xianxia, who had been arranged to enter the venue in the first half, was now the finale. It was autumn and the weather was a little cold. Especially at night, when the cold wind blew, it was bone-piercing, and the chill was at its peak. Before they left,
Jianghu specially gave Xianxia a mink cashmere jacket to protect her from the cold wind. Although the weather was very cold, the atmosphere on the red carpet was very lively. There was a heated competition of attractiveness, and the female celebrities were trying their best to show off their beauty on the red carpet, desperately trying to attract the attention of the cameras. Amidst the flashing lights, the celebrities stood in front of the cameras, constantly striking poses and posing coquettishly. They were wearing as little clothing as they could. The Bentley was parked not far from the entrance. As it was the finale, Xianxia couldn't enter yet. She could only sit in the car and observe the scene outside the car window. As she watched, she was speechless. Why were these female celebrities wearing so little fabric? Some even wore see-through outfits that only covered a few important parts. In the cold wind, they were still stretching their limbs and posing elegantly. It looked so cold. Xianxia's lips twitched. Generally speaking, the red carpet was a battlefield. The female celebrities dressed up carefully just for this moment to be the center of attention. Media from both domestic and foreign countries had gathered. The periphery of the red carpet was almost packed with people. At a glance, it was a sea of people. The only time she walked the red carpet was at Huanyu's annual cocktail party. However, the scale of the Milan Fashion Gala was incomparable to Huanyu's. It was more pretentious and had more media coverage. If she could leave her name on the red carpet, it would be more useful than shooting a few more literary films. At the same time, there was another person who was secretly competing. Han Yuyen hid in the car and refused to get out. According to the organizer's arrangement, she should have made an appearance long ago. However, she refused to get out of the car. Even though the organizer in charge of the red carpet kept urging her, she still ignored him and refused to get out of the car. Because she had not seen Xianxia walk the red carpet yet. Xianxia, this B***TCH, was just a newcomer, and she was already thinking of being the finale. Dream on. Anyway, if Xianxia didn't leave, she wouldn't make an appearance either. At most, they would just wait and see who could outlast the other. Chapter 1488. As Han Yuyen thought about it, she stayed in the car and did not move. It was Lin Ji's turn. She wore a splendid dress and exquisite makeup. She was beautiful and dazzling. When she walked on the red carpet, the foreign reporters did not recognize her. They were not interested in her, so they whispered to each other. The domestic media was extremely excited. They raised their cameras and took pictures of her like crazy. Lin Ji kept waving at the media. It was rare for her to walk the red carpet, so she enjoyed the attention of everyone. Even when the security guards came up to maintain order and let her in quickly, she still refused to leave the red carpet and kept blowing kisses at the media. In the end, he had no choice but to be half-dragged and half-dragged by the security guard. Han Yuyen sat in the car. When she saw this scene, she sneered. Country bumpkin. She had not seen the world. She did not know how this Lin Ji got into the Milan fashion show. She came here to make a fool of herself. What a disgrace. She did not want to walk with such a person and be compared to her. It would be degrading. On the list, only Mu Yaja, Xianxia, and Han Yuyen had not made their appearance. The person in charge of the red carpet ran over to invite Han Yuyen. Han Yuyen asked, "When is Xianxia leaving?" "What do you mean?" "When she leaves, I'll leave after her. How can we let her be the finale at such a big event? For this final scene, you should let someone of my level come to control the situation." The person in charge curled his lips contemptuously. This Han Yuyen was really naive. Naturally, Xianxia would not be the last to appear. She probably did not know that Xianxia and Mu Yaja were walking the red carpet together. "You're really not leaving?" The person in charge was running out of patience. In order to invite this person to the red carpet, he had gone back and forth several times. He had been polite at the beginning, but now his patience was running out. If she did not leave, he would not invite her again. However, Han Yuyen had already made up her mind. She made her stand clear and emphasized, "I want to walk the red carpet after Xianxia." As soon as he finished speaking, the person in charge left helplessly. Han Yuyen closed the car door and rolled her eyes mockingly. "Xianxia, you want to fight with me?" He was still too inexperienced. The red carpet was nearing its end. All of the media were eagerly waiting to find out who the big shot would be at the end of the show. The scene was still very lively. This was a rare fashion event in Italy. It was Wuxia's first time walking the red carpet in Milan with a female partner, and it was also Xianxia's first time appearing in front of the cameras with him. She was so nervous that she almost suffocated. Xianxia clasped her hand over her heart and looked at the flashing spotlights on the red carpet. For a moment, all the spotlights were on, and it was as bright as day, illuminating the silent night. Wuxia saw her taking deep breaths and smiled. His originally cold eyes were filled with gentleness and affection. Nervous? Yes, a little. Xianxia did not mince her words. It was embarrassing to say that this was the first time she had seen such a big event. There were hundreds and thousands of reporters from different countries all over the world. Now they were all gathered together to witness this glittering fashion event. In the crowded crowd, the bodyguards were trying their best to maintain order. Chapter 1489. Wuxia held her hand gently and kissed her fingertips. The moment he looked down, the tenderness in his eyes seemed to melt her. The wind outside the window was bitterly cold, but at this moment, she felt a sense of warmth in her heart. Hold my hand when you get out of the car, okay? He tried his best to soothe her uneasy heartbeat with his gentle voice. The Bentley slowly stopped at the end of the red carpet. From the rearview mirror, Xianxia could see many reporters swarming around the car door. They held up their cameras and flashed their flashlights continuously. Every one of them was trying to be the first to capture this scene before everyone else. The bodyguards immediately rushed over to divert the crowd. Unfortunately, the media was too crazy. Wuxia smiled, opened the door, and got out of the car. Then, under the bright flashlights, he turned around and held her hand. Xianxia held his hand and slowly got out of the car. Her gorgeous Xianxia and her exquisite and perfect figure were exposed to everyone's eyes. Oh my God! It's Xianxia. Is she the newcomer who sat next to Xianxia at the fashion show? I remember her. Her figure in the ink painting on the red carpet was simply stunning. Xianxia's appearance at tonight's fashion show was not surprising. However, what was unexpected was that her male companion on the red carpet was actually Wuxia. Wuxia. This name, even when placed in the international arena, was like thunder to one's ears. As the top celebrity in the business world, the Mu family was one of the wealthiest families in the business world. Wuxia was the head of the Mu family and the CEO of Dishing Financial Group. He used to be the young master of the Mu family and was now the CEO of Dishing Financial Group. His appearance on the red carpet was the biggest surprise of tonight's event. Actually, Milan's fashion show would send VIP invitations to the Mu family every spring and autumn. After Wuxia received the invitations, he would always throw them aside and ignore them. His appearance was a veritable VIP. Tonight, he was dressed in a handmade suit. He was tall and straight, slender and handsome. His delicate facial features softened the charm of Oriental classics and the profound mystery of European descent. His exquisite silhouette was full of heroic spirit. However, compared to the past, there was less coldness. Because of the woman beside him, there was more gentleness between his brows. When he and Xianxia appeared on the red carpet, they instantly outshone the crowd. Magnesium lights flashed across the sky, causing half of the night sky to be as bright as day in an instant. It's the CEO of Mu Group, Wuxia. I heard that he's a business genius. He's young and talented. The reporters were in a frenzy. It seemed that no one had expected that tonight's finale guest would be the rumored scion of a prestigious family, Wuxia. Wuxia held Xianxia's hand and walked towards the end of the red carpet. Shocking. It was really too shocking. In the past, there had been female celebrities and male guests on the red carpet together. However, it was rare for such a pair to be so good-looking. The man was so handsome. The woman was gentle and moving. A talented and beautiful couple. A golden couple. This was it. Wuxia was calm and collected. When he held Xianxia's hand and walked to the center of the red carpet, the reporters burst into screams. Stop. Stand where you are and take a group photo, okay? Chapter 1490. Xianxia, can you smile? Hearing this, Xianxia cooperatively revealed a charming smile, which instantly captivated the reporters in the press gallery. Even some of the international reporters were mesmerized by her smile. It was too beautiful. Especially this Xianxia, when she wore it, it was indescribably beautiful. She exuded a sense of asceticism from head to toe. Chinese elements were highly valued overseas. Many fashion weeks had Chinese,
themed fashion shows. This time, the Milan Fashion Week also had a Chinese-themed show. Especially the Chong Sam, it was once the favorite of many Hollywood actresses. However, it was because of the difference in their bloodlines. How could those blonde-haired and blue-eyed foreign actresses exude the charm of the Chong Sam and its unique classical mystery? These reporters had attended so many events and could be considered to have seen countless people. However, they could not pick out a female actress who wore a Chong Sam and was as beautiful as Xianxia. The red high heels on her feet were based on classical elements. It matched the gown very well.
Xianxia, look over here.
A cry of surprise came from the group of reporters. Xianxia immediately looked in the direction of the sound, and the smile on her face became even more beautiful. The magnesium lights flashed even more fiercely. Xianxia and Wuxia cooperated with the media's request and got closer to each other to take a few photos. The two of them stood together and looked very compatible. The celebrities who had already walked the red carpet and were standing at the entrance of the venue could not help but whisper. Many of the celebrities who had rushed over from China to attend the Fashion Week banquet were silently guessing the relationship between Xianxia and Wuxia. Wuxia was the big boss of Huanyu. The huge Huanyu was just a branch of Dishing Holdings. Wuxia could be said to be the king of the entertainment empire. However, it did not decrease that he had held the hand of any female actress and attended such a banquet together. No one could tell what the relationship between the two of them was. Many people were so jealous that they gritted their teeth. Who would believe that Xianxia didn't have any background? She had just debuted, and she already had so many resources. She was also involved in a scandal with Xianxia, and she was walking the red carpet with such a prestigious figure like Wuxia. Could it be that she was Wuxia's pet? However, Wuxia rarely had any scandals in the circle. It was rare for him to be so close to any female celebrity. Previously, Wuxia had a fiancée. However, a while ago, Wuxia held a press conference and announced that Wuxia and Mu Wanru had broken off their engagement. This news made many people jump for joy. At this moment, Xianxia and Wuxia had become the focus of everyone's attention. At the request of the media, Wuxia intimately hugged Xianxia's waist and planted a kiss between her eyebrows. The reporters all captured this sensational kiss of the century. When Han Yuyen saw this scene in the car, she suddenly couldn't sit still. She couldn't help but feel annoyed. She watched helplessly as Xianxia and Wuxia walked down the red carpet together. She was in a bad mood. She thought that Xianxia deliberately wanted to be the last to appear. She didn't expect that she was arranged to be the last to appear because she had a big shot like Wuxia. She cussed fiercely in her heart. What kind of person was Xianxia to be able to appear on the red carpet with Wuxia? Wuxia rarely appeared in front of the camera. Chapter 1491. Han Yuyen couldn't help but let her imagination run wild. What was the relationship between Xianxia and Wuxia? How could they stand so intimately together and walk the red carpet together? Wuxia was a tycoon in the business world, but he had always been handsome and aloof. There had never been any women around him. Xianxia was probably the first. Could it be? Han Yuyen couldn't sit still when she saw this. All of a sudden, she began to suspect that she had underestimated Xianxia. Maybe this Xianxia wasn't such a simple newcomer. Xianxia stood in the middle of the red carpet with a smile. She looked so charming, as if she was an otherworldly socialite who had walked out of an ancient painting. She also had a hint of arrogance and provocation. Her beauty was different from her usual reserved and pure look. She was flamboyant and sharp, like a blooming poppy. Even if people knew that it was highly toxic, they would rather drink poison to quench their thirst. Wuxia hugged her waist and faced the spotlights calmly. He rarely showed himself in front of the camera like this. In front of the camera, he was insufferably arrogant, exuding the extraordinary aura of a king. He had an imposing appearance and a heroic spirit. The intimidating elegance between his eyebrows made countless female celebrities fall head over heels for him and fall head over heels for him. Any one of his photos didn't even need post-processing. His handsome and exquisite looks completely crushed all the little fresh meats in the entertainment industry, and even the international male models in the fashion industry. He was too handsome. Very few people had the honor of seeing him in person. Many people were deeply shocked by his aura, so much so that for a moment, the cameraman's movements slowed down a little. Many female celebrities were so jealous that they didn't know where Xianxia got the good fortune to be able to walk the red carpet with Wuxia.
Those female celebrities who were racking their brains for tomorrow's headlines were a little frustrated at this moment. With Xianxia like this, she would definitely dominate the headlines tomorrow. There was no hope for them. The domestic and foreign media took photos crazily to capture this historic scene. Xianxia, can you stay close to Chairman Mu? One more, thank you. Chairman Mu, hold her tighter. Mu Yaja did not give the reporters any extra chances. As soon as the time was up, he hugged Xianxia and walked towards the autograph board, causing the media to scramble to follow them. Mu Yaja approached the signature board and took the pen that was handed to him. He then signed his name on the blank space on the board in a flamboyant and elegant manner. The tip of his brush was handsome and powerful. His words were just like him, arrogant and flamboyant. Every stroke was full of tension. In the past, such a signature would only appear on trade contracts that were worth hundreds of millions of dollars. This was the first time it appeared in an event that had nothing to do with business. After Mu Yaja signed his name, he handed the pen to Xianxia. Xianxia took the pen and smiled gently. She raised her wrist and signed her name beside his. The tip of the pen was graceful and her handwriting was very beautiful. It was not inferior to his. After signing his name, Mu Yaja and Xianxia walked to the interview area. Jianghu had told them not to ask any irrelevant questions. Once they did, they would be asked to leave the banquet. The media was very respectful of the Mu group. Therefore, they did not dare to be rash. Hence, most of the questions revolved around Xianxia's speech for attending the fashion show. Chapter 1492. Do I need a reason to walk on the red carpet with anyone? Mu Yaja asked him back. The reporter was speechless. Such an arrogant response had a strong personal style. Mu Yaja had always been casual and arrogant. Hence, the reporter asked Xianxia another question. Xianxia, are you nervous about walking on the red carpet with Chairman Mu this time? Xianxia smiled and said, How could I? Before she could finish her sentence, the reporter quickly asked, Why are you in such a good mood? Xianxia chuckled and added, How could I not be nervous? The reporter was silent. Friendly laughter came from the media. Xianxia said wittily, I'm too nervous, so I'm sweating when I talk. Xianxia was already good at dealing with the media. She already knew how to use words to cleverly avoid difficult topics. Her clever on-the-spot response made the media laugh in disappointment. Ha ha ha. Xianxia is so cute. Hence, they did not make things difficult for her. They asked a few friendly questions and ended the interview. Mu Yaja and Xianxia walked into the venue. Jianghu watched their backs disappear at the end of the red carpet and sighed. He also walked into the venue. Seeing that it was about time, Han Yuyan thought to herself, Now I can finally make my appearance, right? Hence, she opened the car door and adjusted her elegant and arrogant posture. She lifted the hem of her dress and walked out of the car. At first, she thought that Xianxia deliberately wanted to be the last. Only then did she realize that it was because she was on Mu Yaja's list. She used Mu Yaja's name to delay her appearance. However, this was good. At least she was the real last. Thinking of this, Han Yuyan's face showed a proud smile. She lifted the hem of her dress and walked gracefully to the red carpet. However, when she walked to the red carpet, she saw that the people in the venue were busy closing the red carpet. The corner of Han Yuyan's mouth twitched, but she still maintained her elegant smile. She signaled her assistant with her eyes. The assistant immediately ran forward and said in fluent English, Wait, there's still an artist who hasn't left. What? Our artist, Han Yuyan, hasn't walked the red carpet yet. Let's wrap it up later. It's time. That person snorted rudely and ignored her, continuing with a movement of his hands. Han Yuyan could no longer maintain the elegant smile on her face, and her face turned pale. She quickly stepped forward and said condescendingly, What time is it now? You're already rolling the red carpet? That's too much, I haven't left yet. The assistant translated her words for her. The man looked at her from head to toe and said expressionlessly, We're just following orders. The last couple has already walked the red carpet. Moreover, it's time. The banquet is about to begin. Call the person in charge here. I'll talk to him. Han Yuyan said coldly. The man muttered in Italian, then picked up the headset and called the person in charge. The person in charge hurried over. When he saw Han Yuyan, his face turned cold. What's going on?
Han Yuyen snorted and pointed arrogantly at the assistants in charge of closing the red carpet.
She said angrily. What are they doing?
I haven't walked the red carpet yet, and they're already rolling it up. That's too much. Please give me an explanation. Her tone was arrogant and arrogant. Chapter 1493. The person in charge was surprised, and his tone was cold. Time's up, so they're starting to pack up the red carpet. There's nothing wrong with them doing that. Han Yuyen almost flew into a rage when she heard that. She tried hard to calm herself down and forced a smile, pretending to be calm. I haven't left yet. It was just a few words, but she said it while smiling and gritting her teeth. The person in charge asked coldly, What does that have to do with me? Han Yuyen was stunned. You didn't want to leave when I asked you to. Now that time's up, you won't have the chance to leave even if you want to. Wait for the next time. The person in charge said those words casually, but what he meant was that Han Yuyen should pack up and leave, and walk the red carpet again next time. Han Yuyen's face was completely flushed. She was extremely embarrassed. She suddenly lost her composure and said unreasonably, No way! You can't do that. Roll out the red carpet for me again. Let me finish walking the red carpet. There's a limit to acting like a big shot. Who do you think you are? You're just an artist. Do you want everyone to wait for you?
The person in charge rolled his eyes at her.
Sorry, the banquet has started. I asked you to walk the red carpet, but you didn't want to. Who do you think you are? How dare you dream of being the finale after Mr. Mu?
Haha.
He sneered, turned around, and continued to order people to pack up the red carpet. Han Yuyen held onto her fur coat.
Her eyes were red as she glared at them.
She bit her red lips. She felt wronged, but there was nothing she could do. She could only watch as they packed up the red carpet and removed it. The reporters rushed into the venue and immediately erected a barrier. Now, she couldn't even enter the venue. Han Yuyen thought about the fashion banquet she had been looking forward to for so long. Now, she was blocked outside the door, standing alone in the cold wind. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She was full of grievances. She thought about how Xianxia walked the red carpet in glory, but she didn't even have the right to walk the red carpet. Just thinking about it made her heart ache. Her eyes turned red. No matter how hard she tried to hold it in, she couldn't stop her tears from flowing. Her assistant scolded her from the side. What kind of attitude is that? Seriously. Our Yuyen hasn't even walked the red carpet yet and she's already taken it away. She doesn't know how to respect others at all. It would have been better if she hadn't said anything. The moment she did, Han Yuyen felt even more aggrieved and had nowhere to vent. Her tears flowed even more violently. She couldn't help but say, Shut up. After saying that, she went back to the car angrily. As soon as she got into the car, Han Yuyen broke down and burst into tears. There was nothing more miserable than rushing to Fashion Week, only to be blocked outside the door. At the same time, he felt so humiliated. She didn't know if her embarrassing moment had been captured by the domestic reporters. She thought about how the local reporters would write about her if they found out that because she had acted like a big shot, she had suffered a double loss and couldn't even attend the banquet. The more Han Yuyen thought about it, the more aggrieved she felt. She covered her face and cried. In the venue, famous people gathered and the stars shone brightly. Wuxia hugged Xianxia and took the wine glasses. The waiter poured red wine for them. He turned around and raised the wine glass, indicating to her. Xianxia glanced at him and smiled shyly. She mumbled, I can't really drink. I'm afraid I'll get drunk. What's there to be afraid of? I'm here. Chapter 1494. Wuxia suddenly leaned close to her ear. Also, I like how you look when you're drunk. She was delicate and cute, and the 2 patches of red on her cheeks were especially charming. He loved this beautiful and charming appearance. Xianxia pursed her lips and pretended to pout coquettishly as she glared at him. Wuxia clinked his wine glass against hers and drank it in one gulp. He could hold his liquor very well. In the past, when negotiating business, the wine table was undoubtedly a smokeless battlefield. Alcohol tolerance symbolized the confidence of the negotiation. Often, the success of the transaction could not be separated from the boost of alcohol tolerance. Xianxia was still afraid of getting drunk, so she took a small sip. The wine-red wine stained her delicate lips, and it was incomparably beautiful.
Wuxia glanced at it, and his heart was slightly moved. If they weren't in a public place, he really couldn't help but lower his head and lick the beautiful wine on her lips. The female celebrities present were all envious and jealous. They couldn't wait to kick Xianxia away. This Xianxia was too much of an eyesore. It wasn't just the domestic artistes. Some international celebrities were also a little jealous. Among them was Princess Charlotte of the Morocco royal family. As a member of the Morocco royal family, Princess Charlotte naturally received a VIP invitation to Milan Fashion Week. She didn't expect Wuxia to also come. She had met him once, at the Morocco royal family's banquet. Under the arrangement of Duke Hanst, he danced with her. Charlotte thought that this man was quite interesting. During the dance, she could see that he was absent-minded and uninterested, as if he was very reluctant to dance with her. He made a few wrong steps and stepped on her a few times. Charlotte was displeased, but at the same time, he left a deep impression on her. There were very few men who didn't like her. As the princess of the Morocco royal family, not only was she rich, but she was also beautiful and had a noble temperament. There were countless nobles who flocked to her like a flock of ducks. Not to mention those commoners. This was the first time she had seen a man with a cold face in front of her. There was no change in his expression, nor was there a trace of reverence or submission. After the dance, he left the dance floor in a hurry and did not linger. Charlotte could not help but be a little interested in him. This man is very interesting. Moreover, his noble and arrogant temperament was very attractive to her. She was tired of those men who fawned over her in every possible way. She was even more tired of those who treated her as if she was a high and mighty queen. Towards Wuxia's cold and arrogant temperament, she was very attracted to him. After that day, through Duke Hanst, she expressed her admiration for Wuxia to the Mu group, hoping to meet him. Charlotte's view on love was very straightforward. Western culture had been implanted in her bones since she was young. To her, in love, there was no such thing as who took the initiative or who was passive. If she liked someone, she would take the initiative to pursue him. Thus, she picked up a glass of red wine from the waiter's tray and walked towards Wuxia. Wuxia was standing in front of the dining table with Xianxia in his arms, gently feeding her cake. Xianxia said angrily, "I don't need you to feed me." "You don't like me feeding you? There are so many people watching. It's not good. Don't worry about others." Wuxia did not allow her to say anything. The venue was divided into a VIP area and a non-VIP area. Chapter 1495. Hence, he felt that he had nothing to fear. However, Xianxia could feel the sharp swords directed at her from all directions. So many pairs of eyes were staring at her with hatred. She felt uncomfortable all over. Wuxia ordered, "Open your mouth." Xianxia was forced to open her mouth and was fed a mouthful of the tiramisu cake. It's so sweet." She raised her eyebrows in surprise. Wuxia saw that she seemed to like it very much and also took a bite. "Yes, it's very sweet." Jianghu, who was watching from the side, covered his face. "Oh please, what was going on with these two? Sure. Could you at least learn from Linji?" After entering the VIP area, it was as if you were on a spiral motor, constantly traveling among the famous celebrities to make your presence known. Looking at these two, they did not look at anything else after entering the venue. They only focused on tasting the delicious food at the dining table. When Jianghu saw Xianxia holding the cake and savoring it, he was especially angry that she did not fight for it. He expected better from her. The Fashion Week Gala was a gathering of many international celebrities, including the royal family, political leaders, big-name buyers, A-list celebrities, and internationally renowned directors and producers. Any one of them had many dazzling titles, and they were all resources that could only be found by chance. However, Xianxia seemed to be possessed. She only focused on the delicious food and did not pay attention to anything else. Jianghu was so angry that he stomped his feet. Why was this child so thoughtless? But on second thought, forget it. Let her be. Although this child was a little silly, fortune favors fools. Although she did not know how to fight for resources, the person standing next to her was the best resource. Wuxia. If he said that he wanted to help Xianxia rise to the top, Xianxia would definitely be smashed by all kinds of big-name resources that would fall from the sky. Jianghu snorted and decided to ignore her. Hence, he went all over the venue to look for Xianxia.
He did not seem to have seen Gu Xingzi since he walked on the red carpet. Could it be that he was too depressed and didn't come? 2 hours ago, Gu Xingzi arrived at the Louis Vuitton studio with a bouquet of lilies in his hands. According to the agreement, Xianxia was supposed to be his female companion on the red carpet, so he arrived as promised. Before that, he had specially bought a bouquet of flowers, intending to give her a surprise. He remembered that Xianxia liked flowers in his heart. However, when they arrived at the studio, Jianghu was about to leave, but Xianxia was nowhere to be seen. He smelled it, but Jianghu stammered, saying that Xianxia had already left. Gu Xingzi felt a little strange. He asked, "Didn't we agree to walk the red carpet together tonight?" Jianghu, however, hinted that Xianxia had been taken away by Wuxia. Tonight, she would be walking the red carpet with Wuxia. The moment he finished speaking, Gu Xingzi's face darkened and his eyes turned gray. He looked very disappointed. Jianghu was very worried. Gu Xingzi asked expressionlessly, "When did Wuxia arrive?" "I'm not sure." "He took Xianxia away?" "Yes." Jianghu saw this and could not help but say, "Xingzi, give up." Gu Xingzi looked up at him in confusion. "Give up? I can tell that you like Xianxia a lot, right?" Jianghu probed carefully, afraid that he would hurt him. Chapter 1496. Do you need to hide it in front of me? You clearly like her a lot, don't you? Jianghu's tone became a little harsh. Gu Xingzi, however, was distraught. "I've already said it. I didn't." "If you didn't, would you have accepted the job for the love diary?" Jianghu suddenly questioned him sternly. Gu Xingzi was stunned. "You accepted this job because you subconsciously wanted to use this reality show, even if it's fake or fictional, to be by Xianxia's side as her boyfriend, right?" Jianghu was aggressive, but Gu Xingzi remained silent and did not say a word. "You don't have to lie to yourself anymore, okay? You're in love with Xianxia, so why don't you dare to admit it? But as a friend of many years, I can only advise you to give up. It's impossible between you and her. I can tell that Wuxia cares a lot about her, and he values her a lot. You have no chance at all." Gu Xingzi still did not say a word. Jianghu was also furious. In fact, he had long seen through Xingzi's subconscious feelings for Xianxia. If it was in the past, Xingzi would never have accepted a reality show like The Love Diary, let alone let any female celebrity consume his popularity. Although it was his idea to use Gu Xingzi's fame to create hype, it was his idea. But Xingzi was used to having his own principles. Jianghu watched that episode. Gu Xingzi looked at Xianxia with doting eyes. Even through the screen, Jianghu could deeply feel Gu Xingzi's deep feelings for Xianxia. Even if it was just a show, it would be good. Even if it was just a show, it would be good. To be able to date, hug, and hold hands with the person he loved as a couple. These wishes that could not be fulfilled in reality could be fulfilled in the show. This was probably the main reason why Xingzi accepted this show. "Think about what I've said." After saying this, Jianghu left him behind and left. However, until now, he still hadn't seen him. Could it be that this fellow didn't come? Jianghu was slightly annoyed. He seemed to have been too harsh with his words earlier. He was worried that he might have hurt him. However, if he didn't say that, he might not be able to clearly understand how ridiculous he was. Xianxia clearly did not belong to him. This relationship couldn't be forced, so why did he have to be so stubborn? Thinking of this, Jianghu left the venue and headed to the hotel where Gu Xingzi was staying. Xianxia stood in front of the dining table and felt that the food on the table was so sumptuous and tempting that it was too much for her eyes to take in. This one was delicious, and that one looked delicious as well. Xianxia was drooling. She had not eaten dinner. Now was the time of famine. Greedy little cat. Wuxia looked at her greedy appearance and could not help but be cold. Seeing the cream on the corner of her mouth, he couldn't help but reach out to wipe it away. "Miss Yun, please pay attention to your table manners." He teased her on purpose. Xianxia snorted. "What's there to be afraid of?" As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly caught a glimpse of a graceful figure walking in her direction from the corner of her eye. An elegant woman in a gorgeous gown was holding a wine glass in one hand and looking behind her. Her exquisitely made-up face seemed to be full of ambition. Xianxia was stunned and focused on her. However, she saw that she had already walked in front of her and stopped in her tracks. You?
Xianxia frowned in surprise and confusion.
Chapter 1497.
Lowly commoner, move aside.
Her arrogant behavior had undoubtedly infuriated Xianxia. She asked in return, "Who are you? Do I know you? Who is this woman? Why is she so arrogant?"
They walked in front of her for no reason, and one by one, they arrogantly asked her to make way for them.
Wuxia heard the commotion and turned around.
He caught a glimpse of a gorgeous figure from the corner of his eye.
He was slightly stunned and instantly frowned. "What are you doing?"
She walked to Xianxia's side and protected her in her arms. She glared at Charlot with a dignified expression. When Charlot saw Wuxia, the arrogant expression on her face instantly faded and was replaced by a light and charming smile. She went to his side and held his arm as if there was no one else around.
She looked very intimate.
"Arthur, I've finally caught you this time, haven't I?"
"It's me, Charlot. We even danced together some time ago. Do you remember me?" Charlot said in fluent French. She smiled and rested her head on his shoulder intimately. Xianxia was stunned. She was petrified and looked at the scene in front of her in disbelief. She looked up and glanced at Wuxia's gloomy face again. She finally understood what was going on. Her heart settled down. It turned out that another rotten peach blossom had appeared. She simply ignored it and left it to Wuxia to solve it himself. She turned around and continued to choose her favorite desserts. Wuxia could not help but feel frustrated. He wanted to push her away, but Charlot held on to him tightly and did not give him a chance to do so. It also seemed that she was doing this intentionally for Xianxia to see. She wanted her to see how intimate she was with this man. However, when Charlot looked at Xianxia smugly, she saw that she was holding the plate calmly and did not look over. She was calmly tasting the desserts. Charlot's face instantly darkened. This woman did not seem to care about her at all. Wuxia looked at her with a headache. This woman was the mess Mu Linfeng had thrown to him. Princess Charlotte was a member of Morocco's royal family. Princess Charlotte was the beloved daughter of Princess Caitlin of Morocco. Not only was she beautiful, but she was also very wealthy. As one of the future heirs of the royal family, there were countless admirers who flocked to him. The Mu family had many dealings with the Morocco royal family, so Mu Linfeng had high hopes for Wuxia and hoped that he could marry Princess Charlotte. Naturally, Wuxia was well aware of his uncle's thoughts. That was the reason why he had asked him to leave the country. Wuxia was filled with jealousy and dissatisfaction when he arranged for the princess to be with him. If the Mu group could form a marriage alliance with the Morocco royal family, the benefits would be unimaginable. It would be a great help to the Mu group. However, Wuxia was especially disdainful of this. What he hated the most was using marriage as a bargaining chip between business and politics. Moreover, since he already had a woman in his heart, he would not spare another glance at other women. Charlot could not help but feel disappointed when she saw his cold expression. She raised her goblet and gestured to him. "Arthur, let's have a drink, shall we?" "Not interested."
Wuxia's tone was still indifferent. He pushed her away expressionlessly, appearing especially cold.
Chapter 1498.
She had always been confident and arrogant. She had countless fans and the number of people who adored her was as many as the carps in the river. But she was unable to attract this man's gaze. This was a huge blow to her. She didn't believe it. She didn't believe that she couldn't conquer this man. Charlotte appeared in front of her in a flash and pouted coquettishly. "Hey!
What do you mean he's not interested? Make yourself clear." She questioned angrily.
Xianxia took a sip of the red wine and glanced at Charlotte, reminding her kindly, "What he means is that he's not interested in having a drink with you." When Wuxia heard this, he was stunned and looked at her in shock. He thought that this woman would be like her usual self, hiding at one side like a coward and ignoring them. Or maybe she would start to let her imagination run wild and be overly suspicious. He didn't expect that she would be so daring to stand out and go against Charlotte. He couldn't help but be surprised at this. Charlotte's attention was attracted by her words.
Xianxia spoke in French with perfect pronunciation.
Although she wasn't fluent, it was very standard and every word was enunciated accurately. Charlotte was a little surprised, but at the same time, she couldn't help but glare fiercely in her direction. She arrogantly scolded, "It's not your turn to butt in here.
You lowly commoner. Shut up. Hey, you're wrongly accusing me.
Xianxia blinked her eyes innocently and guided her patiently. I'm kindly reminding you, but you're actually scolding me as a lowly commoner. Charlotte didn't understand. Kindly reminding me?
Yes. Because you don't understand human language, right? I'm kindly translating for you.
Xianxia smiled elegantly but suddenly spat out a sentence that was disgusting to death. Charlotte immediately understood the mockery in her words and was instantly angered to the point of suffering internal injuries. Even Wuxia couldn't help but curl the corners of his lips. This woman was too cute. She was usually docile and quiet, obedient and sweet. But once she revealed her edge, she was like a cat with sharp claws and teeth. She could actually smile and say such vicious words. It seemed that he had learned a lot from following Jianghu. Charlotte was furious. However, even if she was furious, she had to pay attention to her public image in a public place. She had no choice but to suppress the anger in her heart and try her best to maintain the noble and elegant expression on her face.
She sneered disdainfully. Shut up. You have no right to speak here. Get the hell away from him. You don't deserve to stand beside him. You're such an eyesore. Xianxia, on the other hand, was neither shocked nor angry.
With a light smile on her face, she said, Your Highness, you seem to be mistaken about something.
Would you please examine the situation you are in? This is Milan, Italy, not Monaco, okay? Chapter 1499.
Charlotte was left standing at the same spot, glaring angrily at him. When they reached a corner, Wuxia could not help but tease her. Little thing, I didn't expect you to have such a fierce mouth.
As he spoke, he reached out and lightly scratched the bridge of her nose. Who asked her to have such an arrogant attitude? Does she really think that I'm a pushover?
Humph.
Xianxia curled her lips coquettishly, and there was a hint of playfulness in her eyes.
Wuxia could not help but feel a little curious.
How did you know her identity?
He had never mentioned Charlotte's identity in front of her.
Xianxia looked up and glanced at him. Then she said, Firstly, from the way she spoke, she was so arrogant. Her every movement had a strong aristocratic accent. It seems like she's either rich or noble.
As for the second one, from the way she spoke French with a unique accent, so I guessed her identity.
The official language of the Morocco royal family was French. Looking at her haughty princess-like appearance, she vaguely guessed her identity. Carefully looking at her face, she remembered that she had seen her on TV before. When the Morocco royal family crowned Princess Charlotte, there were related reports in the country. She happened to see it. Wuxia smiled. So you're not stupid.
Hey, I'm very smart, okay?
Xianxia retorted. When I was in school, I was at least a top student. Otherwise, how could you be so smart? You is so smart. Didn't he inherit my genes?
Then why can't Xianxia solve a simple math problem?
Because he inherited your stupidity. Xianxia was choked by his words, but she was extremely disdainful of his words. She snorted coldly. Mr. Mu, you seem to have overlooked a problem.
What?
A child's innate genes are important, but their education is also very important. Look, Xianxia isn't proficient in his studies at all under your tutelage. Look at you. Look at how smart and adorable she is under my careful guidance.
Xianxia smugly glanced at him from the corner of her eyes.
Obviously, he was determined to go against him. You're full of crooked arguments, commented Wuxia bluntly.
What nonsense.
This is clearly the truth, okay? Xianxia rebuked him.
I'm not going to argue with you.
Wuxia curled his lips and smiled.
He leaned down and whispered in her ear. Were you jealous just now?
As soon as he finished speaking, Xianxia's face suddenly turned red. When Wuxia saw this, the smile in his eyes deepened. She seemed to be a woman who got shy easily. He especially liked how she looked when she was shy. Her face would always turn red, and she would lower her head and frown slightly.
Her coquettish face would look as if she wanted to say something. She would stare at him shyly and aggrievedly. She stared at a certain part of his heart. She stared at him until his body was slightly hot. He knew that his body was hot not because of the alcohol, but because deep within his body, he was reacting to her.
Wuxia hugged her and suddenly confined her to the wall in a secluded corner.
He placed his arms on her shoulders and looked down at her.
Answer me. Were you jealous just now?
When she was arguing with Charlotte, her tone was tough. There was a different sharpness about her that was on the verge of bursting out.
Chapter 1500. Intentionally or unintentionally, she avoided this topic.
She turned her face to one side, obviously avoiding his probing gaze. Even she didn't know why she had been so impulsive to argue with Charlotte just now. In fact, she couldn't afford to offend a noble like Charlotte. Alas, she could not bear to watch her entanglement with Wuxia in every possible way.
She was disgusted. So, there was that scene just now.
Wuxia saw the fear in her eyes. He lowered his head a little unhappily and pecked the corner of her lips with a gentle bite, as if he was coercing her.
Say it.
His tone was domineering and irresistible. He was eager to hear the answer from her mouth.
Between them, she had always maintained an ambiguous attitude and rarely expressed her feelings for him directly. Just now, she was the most domineering she had ever been. But it was for him. This knowledge made him feel complacent. This woman, who had always seemed to be weak and boneless, actually stretched out her sharp claws for him one day. This made him a little wild with joy. Xianxia pushed him. Hey, you don't be like this.
We're still at the venue.
Answer my question. Wuxia was extremely willful and domineering. He didn't allow her to escape. Xianxia lowered her face. At this ambiguous moment, the phone rang at the wrong time. The ringtone came from Wuxia. He seemed to be indifferent to the irritating ringtone.
Instead, he was a little annoyed by this untimely disturbance.
Xianxia said, "Your phone is ringing. Don't worry about it. Hey, at least care about it. What if it's something important?" Xianxia said seriously. Because of her, Wuxia picked up the phone with an unhappy expression. He glanced at the screen and saw that the call was from Wuxia. His expression softened a little and he picked up the phone. "Hello, Daddy." This call, the little guy's voice was especially excited and loud. "Daddy, I saw Mommy on TV."
These words that came out of nowhere caused Wuxia to frown involuntarily.
"Television? NN. Mila Fashion Week report."
"Wuxia, you idiot, it's Milan Fashion Week, not Mila." Not far away, Yu's stern voice was heard correcting her.
"All right. It was Milan Fashion Week. Mommy is wearing such a beautiful dress. She's so beautiful, just like a fairy." Xianxia finished speaking excitedly.
In an instant, his voice sounded strangely aggrieved.
"What a pity. I didn't see it with my own eyes. I can only watch Mommy on the TV."
Xianxia could vaguely hear Xianxia's voice, but she couldn't make out what Xianxia was saying. She stared wide-eyed at Wuxia's expression. Wuxia said, "Little idiot, haven't you gone to bed yet?"
"Daddy, you're the idiot. It's already noon here." Xianxia snorted. Wuxia broke out in cold sweat. He had forgotten that there was a time difference between capital city and Milan. It was 9 o'clock in the evening in Milan, and 2 o'clock in the afternoon in capital city.
"Daddy, I miss Mommy so much.
When is Mommy coming back?"
Wuxia's weak voice came from the other end. It sounded inexplicably sad, as if he was about to cry.
Chapter 1501.
Alive. Wuxia couldn't help but feel disappointed by the little boy's choice of words.
How could he describe it like that?
The two little boys had indeed missed their mother dearly these few days.
Xianxia could still hear Wuxia's heartbroken complaints through the phone.
"I miss Mommy so much."
She heard these words clearly. Hearing Wuxia's longing, Xianxia's eyes reddened. Xianxia had a few days of intense work. Once she was done with the recording of The Love Diary, she was dragged to the recording studio by her manager for a voiceover session. Just as she was done with the voiceover session, before she could even step into the house, she was dragged onto a private plane to Milan by her manager. She counted the days and realized that she hadn't seen the two little lads for about half a month.
Xianxia missed them dearly.
She snatched the phone from Wuxia's hand.
"Xianxia." The moment she spoke, there was a moment of dead silence on the other end.
Then, Xianxia's ecstatic voice came through.
"Mommy!
Mommy!" His voice was extremely loud and clear. The child's tender voice was filled with 4 years of experience. Xianxia's eyes reddened. "Xianxia, I'm so sorry. I haven't been able to tell you and you bedtime stories for the past few days.
Mommy misses you so much, Xianxia asked softly. Mommy, when are you coming back?
His helpless question hit the softest spot in Xianxia's heart.
Her heart tightened and she blurted out instinctively, I'll be back tomorrow.
Just as she finished speaking, she suddenly remembered that there were a few shows tomorrow. Jianghu had repeatedly emphasized that these shows were very important and couldn't be missed. However, she was worried about the two little boys at home. She missed them dearly. She had no choice.
The two little lads were much more important than work.
Once he heard that Xianxia would be back tomorrow, Xianxia was overjoyed. He held the phone and jumped up and down excitedly.
Awesome! Awesome!
Mommy, what time will you be home tomorrow? I haven't booked the plane ticket yet, so I don't know.
Oh,
I see. In an instant, Xianxia's tone turned gloomy. He was indescribably disappointed.
Xianxia couldn't bear it and immediately said, I'll definitely rush back as soon as possible, okay?
Okay. Xianxia's voice was filled with vitality when he heard her promise.
When Mommy isn't here, you must take good care of your little brother. Xianxia stared at her seriously.
Little Chen hummed in acknowledgement before patting his chest in assurance. My dearest Mommy, don't worry. I took good care of you. Okay, be good. Stay at home and wait for Mommy to come back. All right. Xianxia promised again and again. After hanging up the phone, Xianxia's eyes were empty. She thought about how Jianghu would coldly reject her when she mentioned that she wanted to return home early. Just thinking about it gave her a headache. Is it too late to book the plane ticket now? There's no need to book the plane ticket.
Oh?
Xianxia looked at him in confusion. What do you mean?
Wuxia said, I have a private jet.
Xianxia was speechless. Wuxia said, we'll fly directly to the capital tomorrow. Xianxia suddenly blurted out a very popular teasing phrase on the internet. Tycoon, do you lack accessories on your thigh? Wuxia smiled evilly. He grabbed her chin and kissed her flirtatiously. No, I need someone to warm my bed. Xianxia was speechless. Chapter 1502. On the other side.
Wuxia hung up the phone and said to Yu proudly, Yu, Mommy is coming home tomorrow. Yu, who was standing at the side, glared at him resentfully. His eyes filled with murderous intent.
Little Chen could not help shrinking his neck under his father's stare.
Licking his lips, he fearfully asked, Why are you staring at me like that?
What do you think?
Yu crossed his arms and stared at him coldly.
I'll take good care of my brother. Chen, aren't you embarrassed to say that?
Chen blinked innocently as Yu stood in front of him and counted with his fingers expressionlessly.
I washed your clothes, cooked your meals, told you bedtime stories every night and woke you up. I made noodles for you in the middle of the night when you were hungry. Chen, who's taking care of who? The more he spoke, the angrier he got. When his mother was not at home, he had to take on the role of a father and a mother at home. He wished he could have 3 heads and 6 arms to take care of Chen. In the end, the lad was heartless. He turned around and asked for a reward from his mother. He even promised her that he would take good care of his younger brother. Who's taking care of who? Chen felt guilty.
He looked at him timidly and begged, Yu, brother was wrong.
Don't be angry.
Humph.
Yu snorted coldly and put the laundry basket aside. He sat on the sofa angrily and crossed his arms. It was obvious that he was furious.
Chen went up to him in a fawning manner. Just as he was about to reach out to hold his brother's hand, the latter unceremoniously slapped his hand away and ignored him.
Humph. Go away. Wasn't it too late to try to please him now? Yu, don't be angry. You don't look good when you're angry. Look at your face. It's wrinkled like an old man. Yu looks best when you're not angry. Chen coaxed him.
However, his words only added fuel to the fire.
Like an old man. Yu glared at him and said proudly, You're the old man. Yu, don't be angry. Brother doesn't know how to talk. Yu was speechless. He was completely speechless at his stupid brother. Idiot! Idiot! He's so stupid.
Yu crossed his arms and turned his head to the side in a fit of anger.
These days, he was like a full-time nanny, taking care of his stupid brother.
She didn't eat well, was picky about what she wore, was naughty, broke several vases, and even shamelessly asked for a reward from mommy.
Just thinking about it made him angry.
Mu Chen sized him up carefully and said, You, don't be angry. Yu glanced at him coldly from the corner of his eyes. At this moment, the little lad was sitting on the sofa with his legs elegantly crossed and his arms crossed. His arrogant demeanor made him look like an elegant queen who was unapproachable. Mu Chen tentatively sat beside him and reached out to carefully massage his shoulders.
Yu, be good. Yu, be good.
Don't be angry anymore. Yu rolled his eyes in his heart.
Was this idiot treating him like a 3-year-old child? However, Mu Chen's flattery was still effective.
Yu suddenly said, Be gentle.
Oh, okay. Mu Chen obeyed his orders obediently.
He loosened his grip a little as he carefully massaged his son's shoulders and coaxed him sweetly. Yu's worked hard. Brother will massage your shoulders.
Chapter 1503.
While she was enjoying the massage, she also reminded him to control his strength from time to time. Xianxia smiled apologetically and had a lot of fun massaging her.
Yu, is it comfortable?
It's just a though.
Yu commented coldly without even lifting her eyelids.
Little Chen let out a defeated whimper and continued to work hard on the massage.
Idiot, be gentler.
Here, be a little heavier. It's comfortable.
Hee. Xianxia smiled proudly. His silly face was extremely cute.
Yu raised the corners of her eyes and glanced at him lazily from the corner of her eyes. She instructed, You're done massaging. Go and dry the clothes. Xianxia's face fell and he nodded unwillingly. Then, he carried the laundry basket and walked to the balcony with a sad face.
Yu's eyes curved into crescents. She snickered as she looked at Xianxia's dejected back. A smug look appeared on her face. This guy can be quite cute sometimes.
Jianghu rushed to the hotel Xianxia was staying at and knocked on the door.
No one responded for a long time.
He raised his eyebrows suspiciously and returned to his room.
Jianghu's suite was right next to Xianxia's.
He arranged for Xianxia to stay in the same hotel as Xianxia on this trip to Milan.
At the same time, he prepared a room key for both of them just in case. When he returned to his room, he found a spare room key for Xianxia's room. He used the room key and successfully entered the room. However, what he saw was a dark room. He turned on the lights in the hall and closed the door. When he passed by the bathroom, he heard the sound of water flowing from the bathroom. He was shocked. He pushed open the unlocked door and rushed in. The sound of water came from the bathtub. He walked to the bathtub.
There was no one in the bathtub, but it was filled with water. The shower head was not turned off and water kept flowing. The water in the bathtub kept overflowing and covered the floor.
As soon as he entered, his shoes became wet.
Xianxia must have forgotten to turn off the shower head after showering. It seemed that he did not attend the banquet tonight and went straight back to the hotel.
Jianghu frowned and turned off the water.
If he did not check in time, he did not know when to see if the water would come flooding.
Time to check.
He walked into the bedroom and saw to the balconies open. The bedroom was a large suite, and the balcony was an open-air observation deck surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows.
The evening breeze poured in through the windows, making the curtains dance. The room was cold to the room.
To the balcony, to the balcony, to the balcony.
Xianxia, dressed in a black bathrobe, was leaning lazily on the sofa with his head lowered. In the darkness, she could not see his face clearly, but she could still feel the deep aura emanating from him. He seemed to be a little tired. Jianghu's gaze fell on his hand.
Between his fingers was a cigarette that was about to burn out. There was an ashtray on the low table next to him.
The ashtray was full of cigarette butts. Jianghu was stunned. In his impression, Xianxia seldom smoked. He was not addicted to smoking. He only smoked a few cigarettes to refresh himself when he stayed up late to memorize the script. However, it was rare for him to smoke so fiercely. Jianghu's heart skipped a beat. Xianxia seemed to be lost in thought and did not notice his presence. Chapter 1504. Xianxia raised his hand and took another deep puff of the cigarette. However, this mouthful, perhaps because he inhaled too quickly, he choked fiercely.
He suddenly covered his face and let out a heart-wrenching cough. Cough, cough, cough. It was heart-wrenching. Amidst his violent coughing, His fingers loosened and the cigarette fell on the carpet. The smell of burnt carpet instantly filled the air. Xianxia frowned, quickly turned on the floor lamp, and walked over. Gu Xingzi's wet hair was exposed under the light. He looked up in shock. When he saw Xianxia, his eyes dimmed slightly. Xianxia walked to his side and sat down. He looked at him angrily, only to see that his body was dripping wet, especially his hair. It was as if he had just been fished out of a bathtub. He was only wearing a bathrobe, and his hair was dripping wet. It was as if he hadn't wiped it, and the ends of his hair were still dripping with water. Xianxia's heart ached when he saw this. How did this man in front of him become so decadent? In the past, Gu Xingzi had always been high and mighty. He was cold, arrogant, and inviolable, like a king. He would never show such a weak side. Xianxia could not help but feel heartbroken. At the same time, he could not understand. Xingzi, how did you become like this? Ever since he terminated his contract with Gu Xingzi and became Yun Shishi's manager, Gu Xingzi did not hire another manager. He had his own studio. Everything in his acting career was managed by his team. Gu Xingzi opened his eyes lazily and did not say a word. He grabbed the cigarette box on the table and put a cigarette in his mouth. He was about to light it. Xianxia quickly snatched the cigarette from his mouth and said angrily, "How many cigarettes have you smoked? Why are you still smoking?" As he spoke, he glanced at the ashtray. The ashtray was full of cigarette butts. How many cigarettes had this guy smoked without saying a word? Xianxia said angrily, "Your new album will start recording soon. Don't you want your voice anymore?" Gu Xingzi said in a low voice, "Give it to me. Don't smoke anymore." Xianxia ordered and confiscated the cigarette box. Gu Xingzi watched his movements, but did not stop him too forcefully. He closed his eyes and let his body sink into the sofa, but his face was filled with unconcealable loneliness. Xianxia sat down across from him and remained silent for a long time. After what seemed like a century of dead silence, Gu Xingzi suddenly spoke slowly. "What should I do if I fall in love with someone I shouldn't?" Perhaps it was because of the cigarette, but his voice was a little hoarse and obscure. It was low and broken, revealing a little powerlessness and confusion. Xianxia had never seen him so fragile. He moved his lips and took a deep look at Gu Xingzi, but said almost cruelly, "Then don't love." Gu Xingzi was confused. Xianxia forced himself to say coldly and heartlessly, "Don't think about it, don't think about it, don't look at it, and don't have any wild hopes." Gu Xingzi stopped talking and looked down expressionlessly. Xianxia said coldly, "Cut off all the feelings you shouldn't have." "Cut off all the feelings?" Gu Xingzi said indifferently, "If it's that simple, it's not a bad thing." Xianxia was speechless. Gu Xingzi said unwillingly, "But I want her." "Her? Is it Xianxia?" Xianxia held his forehead helplessly. "There are so many women you don't want." "Why her?" "Feeling." Gu Xingzi uttered these two words after a long pause.